Ye Zhi suddenly sat up from the bed, her heart beating wildly as if she had been hit by a hammer. In the apartment room late at night, the air was as stuffy as if it were wrapped in a layer of wet cloth, mixed with a faint smell of mold and rot, seeping out from the cracks in the floor. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the sticky feeling she had just escaped from a nightmare. The clock showed 3:17 in the morning, and the red numbers flickered faintly in the darkness, like dying eyes. She opened the bedside table drawer, and the phone screen lit up. The cold light illuminated her face, reflecting her pale and tired outline. The room looked nothing out of the ordinary. Off-white wallpaper, bookshelf filled with documents brought back from overtime work, curtains half closed, and a familiar city night view outside with high-rise lights like stars. But something is wrong. She blinked, and the edges of the wallpaper seemed to be peeling off slightly. They were not curling normally, but like dried blood threads, snaking down from the ceiling, and thin red threads pulsating under the light. Outside the window, the lights were no longer steady yellow, but flickering like countless will-o'-the-wisps wandering in the fog, flickering on and off, causing distorted shadows to appear on the glass. Then she heard it. That voice came from under the floor. Not a hallucination, not the scraping of the neighbor's slippers downstairs, but a low, wet scraping sound. It's like countless sharp nails crawling slowly under the wooden board, making tiny creaks, as if living creatures are crawling in the soil, looking for cracks to get out. Ye Zhi's back instantly stiffened, and she forced herself to take a deep breath, telling herself that this was just thermal expansion and contraction common in old houses, or water pipe leaks. But the sound became clearer and clearer. As if awakened by her gaze, it crawled faster, accompanied by slight gasps. No, it was slippery friction like a tongue-licking sawdust. "I'm just too tired," Ye Zhi murmured, her voice trembling in her throat. She is an ordinary white-collar worker, typing on the keyboard in a cubicle until late at night every day. She is so stressed that she calculates her performance sheets in her dreams. But tonight, the crawling sound seemed to have penetrated into her head, buzzing. She grabbed her cell phone and dialed Lin Fan's number. Her boyfriend's ringtone rang in her ears, urgent and harsh, and every sound seemed to be mocking her timidity. "Hello? Ye Zhi? What's wrong so late?" Lin Fan's voice came from the receiver, hoarse and sleepy, but he quickly became alert. "You don't sound right." "Fan, did you hear it? There is something crawling under the floor. It's like nails scraping wood. It squeaks. It's so disgusting." Ye Zhi lowered her voice and stared at the wooden floor under her feet. "There is a small crack there, which I originally thought was left over from decoration, but now it seems to be opening and closing slightly like a breathing mouth." Ye Zhi's heart sank to the bottom, and Lin Fan's reaction was like a mirror, reflecting her panic. She slid off the bed and stepped on the cold floor with her bare feet. It felt sticky to the touch, like stepping on wet mud. The crawling sound suddenly intensified, as if he was aware of her approach, and turned into intensive scratching. The smell of sawdust became stronger, mixed with the sweet smell of rot. She squatted down and moved closer to the crack. The flashlight beam shone in. The black hole was bottomless, but something was crawling inside. Pale fingers, slender and twisted like a dry bone covered with a film, slowly protruding from the cracks, with black and yellow jagged nails, scraping out a trace of wood powder. Ye Zhi gasped and knocked over the chair beside the bed as he backed away, causing a loud bang that echoed in the room. There was silence on the other end of the phone for 2 seconds, and then Lin Fan's breathing quickened. "What? Wait. Damn it, I have it here too. I thought it was a dream just now, under the floor. Oh my God, Zhi, it's moving. Get up, don't touch the floor." His voice changed from deep to sharp, as if he was scared out of his wits by something. The same scraping sound could be faintly heard in the background, superimposed on her ears like a chorus of curses. Lin Fan has always been the kind of rational big boy, the tough guy in the gym, who always likes to give her late-night snacks when she works overtime, but now he is incoherent. "I'll be right over. You lock the door and don't turn on the light. It seems to be listening." Just then there was a knock on the door. Dong 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 3 times, slow and rhythmic like a heartbeat. "Monsieur, I'm Su Nuan, the neighbor downstairs. Are you okay? I heard a noise like something hitting the floor." Su Nuan's sweet voice penetrated through the crack of the door, carrying a familiar smell of jasmine perfume. She is a newly moved girl in her 20s. She always wears loose home clothes. She has dimples when she smiles. She helped Ye Zhi pick up the documents that she had dropped in the elevator last time.
Ye Zhi hesitated.
She watched as the pale fingers slowly retracted into the crack, and the crawling sound strangely weakened, as if it had temporarily ceased. She grabbed her phone and whispered to Lin Fan. Su Nuan is here. She said she heard noises. Come quickly. Lin Fan gasped and replied. Don't open the door. Ask first, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Ye Zhi gritted her teeth. The crawling sound had completely stopped, and the room returned to an eerie silence. She turned the lock and the door slowly opened. Su Nuan stood at the door, wearing a pink nightgown with disheveled hair, face as pale as paper, and a strange light shining in her big eyes, not fear, but a cold light of hunger, like a hungry wolf staring at its prey. She scanned the room, her eyes lingering on the cracks in the floor for a moment, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Are you okay? The sound just now was so weird. Ye Zhi forced a smile and pulled her in. Thank you, Su Nuan. I heard wrong just now, maybe it was just a dream. But before she finished speaking, Su Nuan's pupils suddenly dilated, and she grabbed Ye Zhi's arm suddenly, her nails digging into her flesh with an astonishing force. No. You heard it too, right? It's down there. It's always like this, first crawling, then stopping, and then... Her voice trembled, but not with fear but with excitement. Her breathing was rapid, and the smell of jasmine perfume was mixed with a putrid smell, like the breath in a tomb. Lin Fan's phone was still ringing in his ears and he shouted, Ye Zhi, who is she? Don't believe her, I heard her voice. It was like a crawling sound. But before he could finish his words, the lights in the room suddenly went out. Darkness surged in like a tide, leaving only the will-o'-the-wisp light outside the window, reflecting Su Nuan's distorted face. Her smile stretched into a crack, revealing sharp teeth. Under the floor erupted, not a crawl but a violent crash. With a roar, the entire board bounced up, the crack spread like a spider web, and countless tiny claws, black mucus-covered claws, densely packed like cockroach legs, emerged from the depths of the floor. They scratched at the sawdust, screamed, and rushed toward Ye Zhi's ankles. Su Nuan's eyes widened to the extreme. She took a step back and her voice squeezed out of her throat, trembling uncontrollably. It's coming. Look, Ye Zhi, it's coming for you. Her fear was as real as the cold wind, which made Ye Zhi's body goosebumps. And those claws had climbed up her calves, biting and cold, dragging her down into the dark abyss. Ye Zhi screamed, threw Su Nuan away and staggered back, but there were more claws and the floor collapsed, revealing the squirming flesh underneath. A faceless thing, a parasite full of eyes and mouth parts, opening its bloody mouth. Lin Fan's phone was disconnected, leaving only a busy tone and the never-ending crawling sound. Su Nuan collapsed on the ground, her wide eyes reflected the monsters pouring out, and she murmured, Welcome to the first layer of dreams. The claws wrapped around Ye Zhi's waist, and she felt that her mind was being torn apart. This was not reality, she knew, but how to wake up. How to escape. In the darkness, a pale finger stretched out again, this time pointing directly at her heart. Ye Zhi's scream tore his throat, like the echo of broken glass, exploding in the darkness. She felt those slimy claws dig into the skin of her waist like living iron hooks, and the cold and putrid touch crawled up her spine, like countless bugs burrowing into her flesh and gnawing at her nerves. The pale fingers were close to her chest, and the fingertips were bent into hooks, with black and yellow pus dripping from the tips. The stench that hit her nostrils was like carrion juice, making her stomach churn. Su Nuan collapsed on the ground, her wide eyes reflecting the squirming outline of the monster. Her lips trembled and she murmured in a low voice. It has chosen you, Ye Zhi. Don't struggle. It will make you feel comfortable forever. No. Ye Zhi roared like a wild beast. She grabbed the edge of the bedside table with her hands, her knuckles turned white, and she forcefully pulled her body out of the claws. The pain of the torn skin was like fire, and the blood was dripping down her legs, sticky and slippery, but she ignored it and kicked the floor violently. The half-collapsed board suddenly broke, exposing more of the monster's flesh, an eyeless and noseless mass, with a surface covered with pulsating eye sockets and split mouthparts, making a wet sucking sound, like a giant slug swallowing air. She rolled and crawled toward the door. Several of the claws on her ankles were broken, green slime spurted out, and the floor was burned with white smoke. With the door still ajar, she threw herself out and crashed into the apartment hallway. The corridor was dimly lit, and the walls were covered with yellowed advertising flyers. The air was filled with the smell of rust and mold, but now those light tubes began to flicker like a heart twitching. Behind her, a floodlight crashing sound erupted in the room, and the squeaking sound of claws scraping wood chips turned into a dense crawling, like an army of thousands of horses pouring out of the abyss of the floor, chasing her footsteps. Ye Zhi stumbled forward, stepping on the cold tiles with her bare feet. Blood splattered with every step. Her mobile phone fell to the ground. The screen was broken but still on, showing no signal. "Run! They are coming!" Su Nuan's voice came from behind. It was not a scream but a strange encouragement, mixed with gasping, as if on the edge of climax. Her footsteps followed, pattering, followed by a putrid smell. Ye Zhi didn't dare to look back. She knew that Su Nuan's eyes were staring at her back, and the thirsty cold light was like a laser cutting the air. At the end of the corridor was the elevator. She pressed the button and the door opened with a ding. Cold air blew out from inside, mixed with the damp earthy smell of the basement. She rushed in, pressed the first floor button, and the door slowly closed. Just when the crack in the door was about to close, a bunch of claws stretched out from outside the door, and the dark legs bent and scratched, causing sparks to fly. Su Nuan's face squeezed into the gap, twisted into a sinister smile, with green juice hanging between her teeth. "Ye Zhi, you can't escape. It's crawling inside your body." The door was finally closed, and the claws were pinched off, making a crackling sound. Green blood sprayed on the elevator door and flowed down the metal gap, like tears. The elevator began to descend, and the numbers jumped from 17 to 1615. But the speed became faster and faster. The display screen flickered, and the numbers regressed like crazy. Rewind 14 10 5, and then reset to 99, falling infinitely. Ye Zhi leaned against the wall and panted. There was severe pain in her chest, and the wound on her waist was burning. She tore open the hem of her clothes and checked. There was something vaguely moving under the skin like a thin thread. She suppressed her nausea, picked up her phone, and redialed Lin Fan's number. The signal was miraculously restored, and the bell rang. "Fan, the elevator is broken, and it is falling infinitely." Ye Zhi's voice trembled, the lights in the elevator flickered on and off, mist began to seep out of the metal of the wall, and a phantom emerged. Her face was superimposed repeatedly. First it looked like a normal white-collar worker, typing on the keyboard with a smile, and then distorted. Her eyes popped out, her mouth was split to the base of her ears, her tongue stretched out like a whip, and her body was covered with claws. This was an afterimage of her previous reincarnation. She saw her body hanging from the ceiling of the elevator, her neck twisted into a knot, and her intestines dragging on the ground and squirming like a living snake. The stench was overwhelming, the sweet smell of rotten flesh mixed with rust, making her retching. "Ye Zhi, damn it, where are you?" Lin Fan's voice burst out, as hoarse as a wild dog's roar, with rapid footsteps and breathing in the background. "I rushed out of the door, and now I'm in the lobby downstairs. Come down quickly, those things. They came out of my floor." Su Nuan, a woman, I remember, she was chatting with me in the elevator before, saying that there were rumors of hauntings in this apartment, that there were old supernatural incidents downstairs, that something was buried under the floor, and people disappeared after hearing crawling sounds. I thought she was joking at the time, but now, fuck, she definitely knows the inside story. "Hold on. I'm waiting for you in the lobby, and I saw the elevator door." Lin Fan shouted with desperate determination in his voice, and his breathing was like a bellows. "Don't trust anyone, especially Su Nuan. There's something wrong with her eyes, like a dead fish." The elevator shook violently, and the number was set on the first floor. The door is opened, the lobby is empty, and the usual sofas and green plants are now distorted. The sofa cushions are bulging like tumors, green plant vines are hanging down like tentacles, and the air is filled with a strong smell of earth and rot, like a grave being dug. Lin Fan was not there, but there was a woman standing in the middle of the lobby. Muxue, her best friend, wearing a familiar white dress with long hair shawl, and her face was as pale as the moonlight. But Muxue died in a car accident 2 years ago. Is this a phantom? "Ye Zhi." Muxue turned around, Her eyes widened and her pupils trembled. She rushed forward and grabbed Ye Zhi's arm. Her fingertips were as cold as death. How are you still alive? I saw those afterimages, your body. Oh my God, you climbed out of the elevator, your body was covered in blood and mucus, those closets still dripping. How did you do it? A normal person would have been dragged in. Her voice was sharp and full of shock. Her hands involuntarily loosened and then clenched tightly, as if she was afraid that Ye Zhi would collapse at any time. Her eyes flashed with confusion, and this usually timid white-collar best friend actually escaped from the monster wave? Ye Zhi gasped and pushed her away. Muxue? Why are you here? Behind the elevator door. There is something chasing you. Before she finished speaking, the lobby floor began to tremble. Cracks spread like lightning. Claws surged out from under the floor tiles. As dense as a colony of ants, black leg joints scratched the tiles, making harsh metal friction. Mucus splashed everywhere, and the rotten smell flooded the air like a tsunami. Despair surged up like a black tide, and Ye Zhi felt that the old wound on her leg was itching again, as if there were insects gnawing inside. But Muxue's words were like an electric shock. She gritted her teeth and rushed to the reception table next to her, flipping it over and blocking the door. Claws had crawled all over the floor, and a few of them pounced on her ankles. They were cold and slimy. She stepped on them and broke them, and the green juice exploded and burned. Muxue's eyes widened and her voice trembled. You stepped on them. My God, those things are immortal. How are your hands? So steady. Her fear turned to shock. The iron chair in her hand fell down, temporarily pressing the crack of the door. Her claws piled up outside the door. The impact was like thunder. The glass door cracked, and mucus seeped in along the cracks. Muxue's face turned pale and her lips trembled. The cracks in the dream layer. That's where the crawling sound comes from. This apartment is the entrance, and every dream layer has cracks that lead deeper. The hidden exit is the wall behind the management room. Quick, seal the door for me. She rushed to the glass door of the lobby, grabbed the fire extinguisher next to the sofa, and smashed the door lock, her movements panicked but decisive. Ye Zhi was stunned for a moment, and Muxue's eyes swept over full of doubts. Are you still stunned? Those claws have climbed up your legs. You didn't collapse in the elevator just now, why do you seem to have lost your soul now? Move quickly. The two of them worked together to push the sofa and green plant pot over, and the door was finally sealed. Their claws scratched at the outside, and the creaking sound was like thousands of insects gnawing at bones. Ye Zhi collapsed on the ground, sweat mixed with blood dripping down her face. Muxue knelt beside her, gasping and staring at her. Ye Zhi, you have changed. Just now the afterimage of the elevator showed that you died countless times, but you crawled out every time. Is this your ability? No, it's impossible. You are just an ordinary person. Her tone was full of confusion, her eyes fixed on Ye Zhi's face, as if she was watching a monster transform into a hero. At this moment, the side door of the lobby creaked open, and Su Nuan walked in. Her pink nightgown was stained with blood, and her hair was stuck to her face. She smiled. Miss Ye, I'm here to help you. Those things. I heard them. She bent down to pick up the crowbar on the ground and handed it to Ye Zhi. She moved kindly, but when she got close she whispered into her ear. It has entered the body. Look at your arm, the blue veins are beating. It is crawling in your heart. Ye Zhi's heart sank, and she lowered her head to check her arm. Under the skin, light blue veins appeared, spreading like a spider web, traveling upward from the wrist, pulsating and glowing, accompanied by slight itching and pain, like a living thing hatching in the blood vessels. Muxue gasped, took a step back, eyes widened to the limit. What? That blue vein. I've seen it, this is how you died in the previous reincarnation. It's parasitizing. Ye Zhi, why don't you feel pain? Your eyes are as calm as if nothing happened. Her voice trembled, fear mixed with admiration, staring at Ye Zhi's arm, like seeing the immortal female goddess of war. Su Nuan chuckled and retreated to the shadows. Enjoy it, the first floor is just an appetizer. The elevator door opened again and Lin Fan stood inside. No, it was his figure, with a tall and twisted silhouette, arms stretched into claws and a split face. After a few sips, his eyes turned into black holes and he stretched out his hand. Ye Zhi, come, I will take you down. We will be together forever. His voice was a crawling sound, sticky and slippery. When he stretched out his hand, blue veins spread from the fingertips and went straight to Ye Zhi's heart. Muxue screamed and grabbed Ye. That's fake. Don't go. But Lin Fan stepped out of the elevator. The floor cracked again. A new wave of monsters poured out, and the lobby fell into hell. Ye Zhi felt that her blue veins were extremely itchy, and the edges of her mind were cracking. She clenched the crowbar and Muxue's shocked eyes flashed in her mind. Maybe this was her change, the tenacity given by reincarnation? But fear was overwhelming, and she knew that a deeper dream was waiting. Zhao Lin Fan swung out his arms like whips. Green juice gushed out of his black hole-like eyes. A sticky sound of drawing resounded throughout the hall. The air instantly turned into gelatin, and his breath was stuck in his throat. Ye Zhi took a step back, her knuckles turned white when she held the crowbar, and the blue veins on her arms pulsed faster, like a heart beating wildly under the skin, and the itching pain penetrated her brain. She felt like something was hatching inside her body, and her tiny claws scraped against the walls of blood vessels, making a faint creaking sound. "Don't come here," she growled, but her voice trembled like a candle in the wind. Su Nuan giggled out of the shadows. Her body under the pink nightgown was slightly bulging, as if she was hiding a living thing. She licked her lips and green juice dripped from her teeth. "Come on, Miss Ye, let it hug you. The blue vein has been connected, and your heartbeat is synchronized with it. Listen under the floor. The crawling sound is cheering for you." The floor of the lobby shook violently. Cracks exploded like spider webs. Claws spurted out from under the floor tiles, and the shiny black leg segments were dense like a swarm of insects. They scratched at the tiles and made a scream of metal tearing. Green slime splashed everywhere, and the scorching air emitted the smell of burnt meat. The impact of the piled monsters outside the glass door intensified. The cracks sounded like thunder, and the fragments fell like raindrops. Muxue screamed and rushed forward, her cold hands tightly pulling Ye Zhi's waist. Her pale face twisted into a mask of fear. "Ye Zhi, that's fake. Lin Fan's real body is still waiting outside the lobby. Look at his claws, they are too long like those monsters." Her pupils dilated to the limit, staring at the phantom Lin Fan's arm, her voice choked with tears. "Damn it, it is imitating him. The blue vein is the signal, it is summoning more." Ye Zhi's heart was beating wildly. Blue veins were running up her shoulders, and the edges of her vision were blurry. Phantom Lin Fan's claws had wrapped around her calves, and the cold hooks were embedded in her flesh. The drag force was like an iron anchor. She staggered to the ground, and the crowbar rolled away. Muxue rushed to hit her. The iron chair hit her claws and green mist exploded, but more claws came up and wrapped around her ankles. She screamed and fell down. "Ye Zhi, your blue veins. It's shining. The monsters are targeting you, they smell it." Su Nuan's laughter was like a magic sound, and she retreated into the shadow next to the elevator. "Together forever, my dear." "No," Ye Zhi roared. The blue veins in her body were itching to the peak, like 1,000 insects gnawing at the heart. She twisted hard and grabbed the phantom Lin Fan's arm with both hands. It was not flesh but lumps and veins, and the eye sockets on the surface were pulsating and opening. She gritted her teeth and pressed her knees against Lin Fan's chest. She heard the wet sound of bones cracking and green juice sprayed all over her face, burning like sulfuric acid. Muxue's eyes widened and she was stunned during the struggle. You broke it. Ye Zhi, those claws can't even scratch iron. How strong is your hand?" Her voice trembled into pieces, fear turned into shock, her eyes fixed on Ye Zhi's movements, as if she had seen a ghost. The harsh crawling sound on the floor woke her up, like all the insects eating at the wooden board, clicking directly into her forehead. Ye Zhi suddenly sat up, her sweaty back pressed against the sheets. The room was disgustingly familiar. Pink bedside lamp, scattered clothes, and the calendar on the wall stopped at last night. At 3:25 in the morning, the mobile phone screen came on, but there was no signal. She gasped and checked her arm. The blue veins were faint, as pale as an old wound, but the itching and pain were still there, like insect eggs waiting to hatch. "Again. Here we go again," she murmured, her voice hoarse, and the afterimages of the bloody battle in the lobby flashed in her mind. Muxue's shocked eyes and Lin Fan's claws spewing green juice. Is this the second floor? Reincarnation restarted, and her memories were put together like fragments. She felt that she had changed and was no longer the white-collar worker who screamed and ran away. There were quick steps in the corridor outside the door, banging on the door. Ye Zhi. Open the door, it's me, Muxue. Ye Zhi grabbed the bedside lamp as a weapon and stood on tiptoe to open the crack. Muxue rushed in, her white dress was stained with dust, and beads of sweat rolled down her pale face. She hugged Ye Zhi, her cold fingertips trembling. You are alive. God, I thought you would never get out after being dragged into the crack this time. Look at your eyes. You are so calm and frightening. I knew when you broke your claws on the upper floor. You are changing. Her pupils expanded, staring at the blue veins on Ye Zhi's arms, her voice trembling like a broken leaf in the wind. Normal people have gone crazy, but you remember the afterimage? This is the second level of dreams. The crawler is a parasite that enters the body from the blue veins. After hatching Su Nuan, she is a semi-parasite, guiding us down. Ye Zhi pushed her away and flashed back to a fragment of reality in her mind. She and Lin Fan were on a street date last night, holding hands and laughing, when Su Nuan suddenly bumped into her. Her eyes under the pink coat were as weird as a dead fish, and she murmured, "Be careful of the sound of the floor, it can hear your heartbeat." At the time she thought they had met by chance, but now a chill ran down her spine. Su Nuan is the key? She knows everything. Ye Zhi whispered, picked up the phone and dialed Lin Fan. There was no sound and the signal flashed off. The crawling sound under the floor intensified, as if it was close to the soles of her feet. She stepped hard on the bed. The wooden board shook slightly, green mist seeped out from the gaps, and the rotten smell hit her nostrils. But the drag force was too strong, and Ye Zhi was forcefully dragged towards the elevator. Her heels scraped against the floor and sparks were drawn. The blue veins glowed brightly, and her body squirmed like a tide. She felt that the edges of her mind were shattered, and endless darkness swallowed her vision. The elevator door slammed shut, and the numbers jumped 99, 99, 99. The feeling of falling was like an abyss, and there was only a crawling sound in my ears, and a sticky whisper. Come deeper. Then everything was gone. Muxue gasped and pulled her up. Don't step on it. The second layer of crack is in the underground parking lot, which is the entrance hub. Let's seal it, maybe we can break through the layer. Your blue veins haven't fully developed yet. It will give you time, but it will soon. The two rushed out of the door, the corridor lights flashed, the wallpaper bulged like living flesh, and claw shadows walked under the paper. The elevator door opened, and the infinite numbers were reset. They rushed down the stairs, their footsteps echoing like heartbeats, the cracks on each floor widening, their claws protruding to suck the air, and the wet sound was like a giant slug swallowing. The ground shook violently, cracks burst into green mist, and a group of crawlers spewed out like a tide. Eyeless lumps rolled, superficial slits opened and closed and dripped pus, claws densely covered the ground, black leg segments scratched the cement and emitted sparks, mucus splashed and burned tires, and the smell of burnt air filled the air. Dozens of heads surrounded them. The air turned to glue and their breath burned their throats. Muxue screamed and retreated, tripped to the ground, her claws pounced on her legs, the hooks were embedded, and green juice sprayed all over her skirt. Ye Zhi, there are too many of them. The blue veins attract them. Your pulse is beating like a lighthouse. Her face turned pale, her voice broke, and despair and admiration flashed in the fear. You have killed them from above. Hurry, save me. At the entrance to the underground parking lot, the smell of damp soil mixed with engine oil hits your face, and the cold wind is like ghost breath. The lights are sparse, the car shadows are twisted into animal shapes, the cement floor is cracked, green juice is flowing into a stream, and glue is bubbling. Muxue pointed at the central crack, a black abyss, 3 meters in diameter, with squirming flesh walls on the edges, densely pulsating eye sockets, a crawling sound inside like thunder, and thousands of claws stacked and surging. That's the core. The source of the parasite spreads across the apartment from here. She trembled, staring at the crack with wide eyes. But the monster is coming out. Listen. Ye Zhi's heart sank, her blue veins itched like fire, and her body squirmed faster, but the memories of reincarnation came back. The elevator was trampled and the ceiling of the lobby was cracked. She picked up a broken iron pipe on the ground. Calm as ice, rushed forward and smashed the pipe down. The swollen head exploded and green brains sprayed 3 meters away, scorching the ground. The claws turned towards her and rushed towards her. She dodged sideways and the end of the tube pierced one of her eye sockets, causing a wet explosion inside. The juice splashed onto her face, causing it to be hot and stinging. "Get away!" she screamed, breaking 3 claws with her foot, and the sound of cracking bones echoed in the parking lot. Muxue's eyes widened. She broke free from her claws and stood up sluggishly. You killed 5. Ye Zhi, you killed those immortal things with just 1 shot? Your actions seemed to be predicted. The blue veins didn't control you but strengthened it. Her voice trembled to a high octave. Fear turned to ecstasy, and her eyes shone with awe, as if she saw a god descending into the mortal world. And her usually timid best friend turned into a monster-slaying madman. But the group of monsters was endless, and more emerged from the depths of the cracks, piling up into a wall of flesh and pressing down on them. Suddenly, the iron gate of the parking lot burst open, and Lin Fan rushed in. The tall figure was covered in blood, holding a fire axe, and his eyes were as red as a beast. "Ye Zhi, Muxue, damn fucking monster!" He jumped up with a roar, slashed down with the axe blade and cut off 10 claws. Green blood spurted out like a fountain, and the burning stench rose to the sky. "I came down from the lobby and heard your scream. That bitch Su Nuan, she is the key." She presided over the apartment ceremony and buried the source of the parasite. Ye Zhi was ecstatic and rushed towards him. "Fan!" But a huge lump shot out from the side. Its claws were like spears and penetrated Lin Fan's chest. Blood spurted out, atomizing the air. He staggered to his knees, the axe fell, and his internal organs were dragged out and squirmed. The smell of blood and rust overwhelmed everything. Su Nuan is the first key." He vomited blood and murmured. His eyes burst with blood. Blue veins spread from the wound. The skin swelled and the ripper opened. He turned into a crawler, pounced on Ye Zhi with his claws and made a wild beast's cry. The darkness shattered and Ye Zhi woke up again, sweating like rain on the bed. The crawling sound on the floor became louder. The clicking sound was right next to my ears, shaking the legs of the bed. She gasped and sat up. The 3rd floor? The blue veins on his arms were dim but spread across his chest, and memories were like a flood. Lin Fan's blood sprayed on his face, and Muxue's despair when he pushed into her. The room was silent, but even more terrifying, something strange was reflected in the mirror on the wall. She approached and saw that she was pale and normal in the mirror, but an old man stood in the shadow behind. Shen Mo with wrinkles like ravines, turbid eyes staring at her, lips moving silently. "Come to me, bottom." The mirror fogged up, and his figure melted, leaving behind a crawling whisper that ate directly into the soul. "No! Fan!" Ye Zhi collapsed and screamed. Her heart was pierced by a knife, and the blue vein resonance was itching to the extreme. She smashed his head with a wave of her pipe, and green and red brains spurted out, splattering all over Muxue's face. Muxue screamed and pushed her. "Ye Zhi, he is gone. Enter the crack, this is the exit. Your tenacity. Only you can survive." She pushed Ye Zhi hard and fell into the black abyss. The tide of claws engulfed herself, and the tearing scream echoed. The corridor outside the door has become a prison tunnel. The sparks from the burst lamps are like rain of blood. The wallpaper bulges higher. Thin claws protrude from the cracks, scraping the air with creaks. Green juice drips and burns the carpet, making a sizzling sound. She grabbed the bedside lamp and smashed the window glass. Cold wind mixed with earthy smell poured in. The night sky outside the apartment was twisted like ink churning, and the outline of the building elongated into the spine of a giant beast. The top floor. The attic, that old thing must be there. Fragments of reincarnation memories flashed. The bloody battle in the lobby, the massacre in the parking lot, Lin Fan's brain sprang in the face, and Muxue's desperate push. She gritted her teeth, her blue veins gleaming slightly, and the power in her body surged like electricity, but the itching pain intensified into thousands of insects biting her bones. She staggered out of the room, her footsteps as heavy as dragging a corpse. The stairwell goes up endlessly, and with every step, the sound of crawling under the floor is like thunder, and the rattling is so dense that the vibrations are visible to the naked eye. Dust is sprinkled from the ceiling and mixed with green mist, which makes the throat feel like it is on fire. At the end of the 3rd floor, The iron door was welded shut and stained with rust like blood. She slammed it with her fist. The strengthened blue veins made the joints as hard as steel. The door lock exploded with a loud noise, but the shock from her fist hurt her bones. Green juice spurted out from the crack of the door and burned her skin, causing blisters and smoke. "Get out!" she screamed, hitting her shoulder hard. The iron door twisted and cracked, and the dark wind blew inside, carrying the smell of corpses and burnt candles. The attic on the top floor is like a deep cave in a tomb, with rotten wooden beams and dripping water, and piles of yellowed diaries in the corners. The pages turn automatically like insect wings, and the ink squirms into runes. Whispers pour out from the pile of books. Ancient tombs. Summons. Eternal bite. The candlestick in the center is swaying, and Shen Mo is sitting cross-legged. His face with wrinkles as deep as ravines is eerie in the firelight, and his cloudy eyes are staring at her like hooks. Here it comes. Ye Zhi. On the third floor, your blue veins have been connected to the heart core, and there are only 3 rounds of incubation left. His voice was as dry as the friction of dead leaves, and he pointed at the diary. The apartment was built in the late Ming dynasty. The ancestor of Su Nuan, the witch, summoned the nightmare parasite from the cracks in the earth's veins. The ritual required 3 souls to be sacrificed alive and buried in the foundation of the building. It will reincarnate forever and consume the minds of the residents. Ye Zhi gasped and rushed closer, her chest bursting with blue veins. She knelt down and grabbed a diary. The pages were as sticky as human skin, and the handwriting was twisted. Su Nuan, her ancestor, is a priest? Damn. This bitch designed me from the beginning. She glared at Shen Mo, her eyes as red as blood. Who are you? The ghost in the mirror, why are you pointing the way? 3 keys, tell me clearly or I will smash them. Rot your head. The floor of the attic suddenly shook and small crawlers emerged from the wood cracks. Lumps the size of thumbs, eyeless cracks dripping pus, black claws as dense as hedgehogs, dozens of them crawling all over her shoes, hooks embedded in the flesh, green juice seeping into the blue veins, itching pain like electric shocks running through the brain. She screamed and threw her legs. The lumps burst and sprayed juice, but more came out, forming a carpet of flesh and swallowing the candlelight. Shen Mo sneered and pulled out the yellow talisman from under his robe with his withered hands. The talisman was pulsating like living blood. He murmured, and the talisman paper spontaneously ignited with blue fire and was thrown towards the group of lumps. Boom. The fire exploded like thunder. The green mist evaporated into black smoke. Hundreds of small crawlers turned to ashes, and the remains of charred corpses scattered on the ground with the roar of molten metal. The air in the attic was scorching and twisted, and all the candles were extinguished, leaving only the afterglow of the rune fire. I am the tombkeeper, the first-generation resident of the apartment. I witnessed the ceremony, and half of my body was parasitic but not crazy. Shen Mo gasped, and the sleeves of his robe were burned to reveal his left hand. Blue veins wrapped around the stump, and the bone stubble at the broken wrist was scorched black. 3 keys to break the layer. Muxue's memory fragments in her childhood room. Lin Fan's token of love, the necklace around your neck. Su Nuan's cursed heart needs to be cut into her chest and burned in the bottom crack to wake up to reality. But the blue veins will backfire, strengthening your ability to kill monsters, but eating away at your humanity. Ye Zhi's fingertips touched the mirror, and the cold mist wrapped around it like a living thing. The rotten musty smell went straight into the nose, like old corpse water in the grave. She took a step back. The blue veins in her chest were twisting like fire snakes. Itching pain penetrated into her lungs. Every heartbeat felt like claws scratching inside her lungs. The smell of green mist came out of her breath. The bottom floor. Where is the fucking bottom floor? She cursed, her voice hoarse like sandpaper across an iron plate, black shadows squirming at the edge of her vision, and a crawling whisper buzzing on her eardrums. Come, devour the heart. But doubts arose in his mind. Why help me? Your blue veins are also spreading. Do you want to lend me the key and escape by yourself? Shen Mo smiled sinisterly. In the depths of reincarnation, I have an old score. Let's go downstairs to get the pieces of Muxue. Su Nuan has noticed it. The 2 rushed out of the attic, and the stairs went down endlessly. The crawling sound was like a tsunami. The walls were fleshy and pulsating, and the cracks in the eye sockets made a wet sound as they sucked in the air. On the 5th floor, a pink figure blocked the way Su Nuan's illusion. Her nightgown bulged like a pregnant corpse, her face twisted into a pale mask, green juice dripped from her eye sockets, she giggled like broken bones. Miss Ye, see you again. Old ghost Shen Mo. Your talisman fire cannot burn my heart. Come join us, the blue veins resonate so much. The phantom's body exploded and transformed into a giant crawler. The mass stretched 10 meters, the claw arms were swung like whips, the black leg segments scratched the wall and sent out sparks, the rippers opened and closed to spray green mist, the rotten stench flooded the corridor, and the ground cracked and swallowed feet. Ye Zhi stepped back, and the blue veins attracted the claw whip to rush forward. The hook scratched her shoulders and drew blood, and the pain penetrated into her bones. She picked up the broken iron from the handrail of the staircase and used it as a stick, and smashed the base of her claws. The strength exploded, and the iron rod embedded in the swollen flesh and exploded, but more whips came out, wrapped around her waist and dragged her, making the bones crunch. Ye Zhi, back off! Shen Mo roared out the second talisman, and the blue fire ignited his right hand. He rushed forward and pressed the talisman at the core of the illusion. A huge boom. The spell detonated the arm, and the flesh and blood evaporated into a pillar of fire, penetrating through Su Nuan's phantom chest. The green heart exploded like a watermelon, juice sprayed on the walls, and the giant body disintegrated into a tide of insects that retreated. There was a raging fire in the corridor, and the smell of burnt meat and rust was pungent. Ye Zhi's eyes widened, her chest pulse beat wildly, and her body squirmed like fetal movement. She touched her neck. Lin Fan's silver necklace was still there, with the heart-shaped pendant engraved with Ye Zhi. When she touched it, heat flowed into the blue veins. The itching pain subsided slightly, but her strength exploded like a tide. This charm blew up hundreds of them. They can't even chew through the iron, and you turn a piece of paper into ashes? Her voice trembled, fear turned into shock. The white-collar worker who usually shrank saw the old ghost guarding the tomb, slaughtering insects like a god. Shen Mo's figure in the remaining smoke in the attic was as tall as a demon, and his turbid eyes shone with a cold light, which sent chills down her spine. Shen Mo vomited blood and whispered, "First reminder, the pieces of Muxue are in the childhood room, hidden behind the wall. Quickly, go back to your room and break Muxue's lair." He pushed her downstairs and was swallowed by the remaining insects, and the tearing scream echoed. Ye Zhi ran down wildly, her chest veins burning like fire, and the memory fragments were pieced together. The blood sacrifice in the ancient tomb in the attic diary, the eternal curse of Su Nuan's ancestors, and the world was like a nightmare nest. She rushed back to the room, the door slammed, and the sound of crawling on the floor shook the bed and hit her eardrums. There was a corpse lying on the bed. Muxue, her white dress was stained with blood, her pale face was as peaceful as sleep, but her eyes were open, her pupils were dilated, and she was staring at the ceiling. Her lips were moving and whispering, Not really." The voice was like ghost threads, green mist seeping from the corpse's throat. After the wallpaper bulged, the dark grit cracked, and pink fragments flashed inside, like fragments of childhood photos, and the edges pulsated like a living heart. Ye Zhi's eyes widened, she broke free from her claws, and stared blankly at Shen Mo's body with broken arms. He knelt down gasping for blood, his robe stained red. "Old ghost, you blew up both of your own hands. The illusion is not dead. Will you break your heart when it explodes? Your talisman. Is it the life fire?" Her voice broke into a high pitch, and she was shocked as if she saw a god committing suicide. The usually gloomy old man actually changed his way with his arms, and the madness flashed in his cloudy eyes, which made her feel chilled, and her blue veins resonated with awe. Ye Zhi's fingertips were embedded with pink fragments, and the touch felt like grabbing a living heart. The pulsating heat flowed into the palm of her hand. The blue veins resonated and exploded instantly. Her chest felt itchy and painful as if all insects were eating her. She screamed and arched her body, and her vision shattered into a blood-red mosaic. The lips of Muxue's corpse squirmed, intensified, and green mist spewed from the throat, turning into a phantom and reappearing. Muxue, with her pale face close to the window glass, whispered in the rainy night, "Ye Zhi, something is wrong with Su Nuan." The smell of her family's ancestral graves always hummed strange songs late at night. Don't believe her, the blue veins are bait. The screen flickered, and the scream of Muxue being torn apart by the tide of claws echoed, and the fragments melted into pink light and penetrated Ye Zhi. Between the eyebrows, memories are embedded like poisonous hooks. In the childhood photos, Muxue's smile on her young face hides the green vein birthmark. Her ancestor is a witch, and the eternal curse will eat us all. Ye Zhi gasped and knelt down. As soon as the fragmented key entered her body, the blue veins spread faster. Her core fetal movement was like a hammer, but her strength surged. She punched the bed, sawdust flying like blood mist, and the cracks in the wallpaper shrank and creaked. The door burst open, the cold wind filled with the smell of corpses, and Su Nuan's giggles seeped out from the corridor. The first one. You are so good, Miss Ye. Now let's chase the second one, Lin Fan's love, waiting for you to break up. Ye Zhi gritted her teeth and jumped up. The silver necklace around her neck was hot, but it was not complete. The memory fragments were pieced together, and the core of Lin Fan's token was hidden in the dark room of the old love nest, and it needed to be activated by herself. She rushed out of the door, and the apartment had mutated into a maze. The corridors were stretched endlessly, the walls were fleshy and bulging, the cracks in the eye sockets were blinking together, dripping green juice was sizzling on the ground, the floor was collapsing everywhere. The cracks were like huge mouths swallowing feet, black claws were densely stretched out for hooks, thumb-swelling crawlers appeared in groups, the eyeless cracks spray corroded the air, and the earthy stench penetrated straight into the nasal cavity. She crushed 3 lumps, her blue veins were strengthened so that her soles were like hammers, insect juice exploded and splashed on her calves, and the burning pain penetrated her bones, but she was rewarded with a flash of prediction around the corner ahead. A giant claw was ready to strike. Get away, you rotten flesh. She growled, picked up the broken light tube and used it as a stick. When she waved it, there was a roar of wind and thunder, and she exploded more than 10 lumps. The green mist evaporated into black smoke, and the walls of the maze trembled and receded. But Su Nuan's illusion appeared multiple times. The first pregnant corpse blocked the road. Her belly squirmed like a fetus under her nightgown, and her face twisted and giggled. I can never escape, Ye, your blue veins love my heartbeat. She rushed towards her, whipping the air with sparks with her claw whip. Ye dodged sideways and pierced the pregnant belly with the stick, a wet explosion. Green juice poured over her head like a fountain, burning her eyes like soreness. She staggered back and heard her mother murmuring before she died. Zhi, why didn't you obey? Her mind was confused, and the second vision climbed down from the ceiling. The girl Su Nuan had a bright smile on her face. Attic darkroom? Where is Lin Fan's body? Laugh, the brain you smashed with your own hands is still warm. The claw arms wrapped around her waist, the hooks were embedded, and the blue veins attracted the green mist to bite her. She felt that the edges of her humanity were peeling off, and she hallucinated her father's car accident screams, Muxue's torn wails, and her mind was buzzing. Give up, the resonance is so good. Ye Zhi's eyes were red. Her chest pulse was beating wildly to suppress the phantom voice, and she smashed the phantom's jaw with one knee. The bones cracked like firecrackers, and the stick penetrated the crack boom. The giant body disintegrated and the insect swarm dispersed. She gasped for blood and wiped green juice on her face. Her skin blistered and smoked and itched and hurt like fire. Su Nuan, you witch bitch, I can't kill you even if I dig my ancestral grave. The twists and turns of the maze intensified, and the stairs loomed but twisted into a spiral abyss. The crawling sound was like a tsunami blasting up from the bottom. Every step vibrated, dust and green mist mixed together, and it was like swallowing rust. She climbed the iron handrail upwards, and on the way she had the third vision of Su Nuan, an old woman squatting on the ladder with wrinkles dripping with pus. Shen Mo loved me, what do you think he asked for before he broke his arm? A bite of the eternal blue vein. He stretched his claws and tongue 10 meters to lick the smelly air. Ye Zhi jumped up and smashed the base of his tongue. Plasma sprayed on the slippery stairs. She slipped several meters. The hooked legs of the black claws dragged into the cracks. The lump bit the thigh flesh, and the green juice seeped through the blue veins to hatch. Accelerating, her heart core vibrated as if she was about to break out of the shell. She screamed and broke away. The strength exploded and tore the 10-headed worms apart. The remaining limbs flew against the wall and made a sound of metal. The phantom old woman's turbid eyes widened, her voice trembled and broken. You, Blue vein has been 3 times in a row, how can you still be hatched? Impossible. Her ridicule turned to fear. Her pale face twisted and retreated, and disappeared into smoke, making Ye Zhi's heart tremble. Even the illusion is afraid? The attic darkroom finally appeared, and behind the secret door was the two's old love nest. The pink lamp was dimly glowing, the bed was messy and the sheets were stained with blood. Lin Fan's body was lying on the ground. The skull was broken and white and red brains were flowing. The blue veins in the chest were bulging like an averted heart. The silver necklace pendant Yong'ai in the shape of a heart was pulsating and glowing, but the core bead had fallen into the secret compartment. Under the bed. She jumped close to grab it, and the beads were as hot as molten iron, melting into the necklace. The second key was activated. The heat rushes through the blue veins, the itching pain is temporarily relieved, the power explodes like a tide, and the vision is fully opened. The tide is coming behind the wall. Lin Fan's remnant soul suddenly appeared, a translucent figure kneeling beside the bed. His face was pale and his eye sockets were hollow. His voice was as hoarse as the wind blowing over the bones. Ye Zhi. Shen Mo is not the gravekeeper. He is Su Nuan's lover, the reincarnation of the lover of the witch in the late Ming dynasty, who was used by her to fall into a dream, and the broken arm is atonement. The third key is in her heart, cut open and burned, but she will I want you to die together. The remaining soul reached out and touched her face, as cold as grave soil, with crazy love flashing in his eyes. My necklace will protect you, my love will never die. The figure faded and melted into the light of the necklace. Ye Zhi's tears mixed with green juice fell down, and her chest was as tight as a knife. Fan, why didn't you tell me earlier? Is this the old ghost's revenge for her? The darkroom door exploded, and a tsunami of crawlers poured in. Hundreds of thumb lumps piled into waves of flesh, eyeless cracks sprayed out green mist. Claws were as dense as a heavy rain scraping the wall, and the stench of putrefaction flooded the space. She swung her stick to slaughter the front row, and the blue vein dual key enhancement allowed dozens of them to explode with each hit. Insect juice rained down on the ground, but the waves behind her were even higher. The hook scratched her arms and the flesh was bloody. She retreated and hit the wall, and she flashed with anticipation. The giant claws descended from the rift in the ceiling. The stick hit her, making a wet sound as the iron pipe embedded in her flesh, but the shock broke the stick. She grabbed the bedside lamp, smashed the window and jumped out of the attic. The cold wind filled her lungs with the smell of earth. The night sky outside the apartment became a pulsating flesh wall, and her eye sockets were filled with stares. Shen Mo's figure faded and appeared at the head of the ladder. He knelt down with his broken arms and body. His turbid eyes flashed coldly. Quickly go downstairs. I'm delaying. He muttered and burned the last yellow talisman. His head spontaneously ignited and the blue fire exploded. The pillar of fire evaporated into the sky and climbed into the waves. The smell of burnt corpses was pungent and mixed with rust. The insect tide shrieked and dispersed, and the attic collapsed with embers. Ye Zhi ran downstairs, the walls of the labyrinth shrank and squeezed. The floor cracked and black claws danced wildly. She crushed countless lumps, the fetal movements of the blue veins intensified. The edge of the three-wheel incubation cracked, and her relatives and friends with human auditory hallucinations wailed endlessly. Mom didn't fan. But the heat of the necklace was suppressed, and the power made her dodge the claw whip like a ghost. Light and shadow suddenly appeared at the end of the stairs, and Su Nuan stood there, her nightgown open to reveal the blue veins in her chest and the pulsing green heart. The cursed heart of the third key was dripping with blood and squirming in her palms. Her face was seductively twisted, and her giggles were like chewing bones. Have you got the 2 keys? Come and get the third one, Miss Ye. Shen Mo's old love is beating in this heart. Behind her, endless crawlers squirmed. Cracks opened in the sea of black flesh, and green mist flowed like a tide. Coming forward, the earthy stench foreshadowed the abyss of despair. Ye Zhi stopped, her blue-veined resonance core beat wildly, and the itching pain reached its peak. She felt that the fetal movement was about to break the shell, and the black shadow at the edge of her vision swallowed. You finally appeared. Cut your heart and wake up to reality. But Su Nuan's eyes flashed madly, and the remaining soul of Shen Mo echoed behind the wall in a whisper. Be careful. Her eternal life requires your soul sacrifice. The darkness approached again, and the hook of reincarnation was deeply trapped. The soles of Ye Zhi's feet were firmly embedded in the wood of the stairs. The cracks spread like spider webs. The blue veins beat wildly in the chest like war drums. Heat flow and itching pain intertwined into a web. Every pulse was like thousands of needles piercing the bone marrow. She stared at Su Nuan in front of her. The woman's nightgown was half open, and the blue veins on her chest were like green snakes wrapped around a green heart. The third key, the cursed heart, was crawling in her palm, dripping blood and corroding the stairs. The earthy stench was like the dampness of a tomb and rushed straight into her nose. Behind him, the black flesh waves of the sea of insects rolled. The eyeless masses piled up into mountains, green mist sprayed out from the cracks, and the dense claws scraped the air like a heavy rain hammering iron, and a prediction flashed. Within 3 seconds, the flesh waves will engulf the stairs. Ye Zhi's heart was pounding, and she reached out to grab it. The blue veins glowed brightly, and the incubation in her body accelerated. The itching pain was like 10,000 claws swallowing her. She felt the edge of her mind cracking, and Su Nuan's laughter sounded outside the door. The second key. Come and get it. The darkness swallowed it up again. Everything was gone. But the reincarnation was deeper, and the secrets of the attic were like poisonous hooks eating away the soul. Su Nuan's giggles were like chewing bones, her seductive face was twisted, and her green eyes flickered with hunger. Fox? Miss Ye, you praise your ancestors too much. My witch in the late Ming dynasty signed a contract with the nightmare in order to seek eternal life, and sacrifice 3 souls alive to bury the foundation of the building. This apartment is a mass grave ceremony. The blue vein is the bait. It's the guardian, the semi-parasitic presiding officer. Eternal life needs the soul sacrifices of you reincarnation insects to continue. The pulse in the heart of her palm accelerated, and green mist sprang out from the cracks of the stairs around Ye Zhi's ankles. It was as hot as molten lead, and the blisters on her skin exploded and emitted white smoke. She gritted her teeth in pain, and black shadows engulfed the edges of her vision. That old ghost Shen Mo thinks you can get back at me by breaking off your arm to atone for your sins? His love is beating in my heart. Come on, cut it open and try. The resonance is so beautiful. You finally showed your foxtail, Su Nuan. Ye Zhi's voice was hoarse and frosted, and every word she squeezed out was accompanied by the muffled sound of fetal movement in her chest. She felt that something in the core of her heart was scratching the walls of her claws, and the edges of the incubation cracked like thin ice. Human auditory hallucinations came again. Where is her mother's? The sound of her father's bones breaking in the car accident, Muxue's torn wails, mixed with the whispers of Lin Fan's remaining soul. Heartbreaking. Let's die together. Her legs were trembling, and she couldn't help but kneel down. The heat from the necklace around her neck barely suppressed the itching pain, and the strength poured into her limbs, making her knuckles snap like metal. Su Nuan's eyes narrowed and the mocking turned gloomy. Fragment? That little bitch pushed you into the crack and thought she was a hero? Her green vein birthmark was a sacrifice marked by my ancestors. She raised her hand, and the cursed heart spurted out blood like a whip, tearing the air and causing sparks to fly. Ye Zhi predicted the attack and dodged sideways. The blood whip hit the stairs and blasted a black hole. Black claws burst out from it and hooked her calf, tearing open a bloody mouth, and green juice seeped in. Burning pain went straight to the blue veins. She grabbed 3 lumps with her backhand, pinching the baneling insect juice with her palm like iron pincers and splashing on her face. The smell of earthy smell in her throat was like swallowing a carrion, but the surge of strength made her jump forward and pounce on Su Nuan's chest. Seeking death. Su Nuan's green eyes widened, her clawed arms stretched 10 meters from under her nightgown. The whip shadow was like a net, and the green mist corroded the air. Ye Zhi had no strength at all with her stick, and she fought hard with her bare fists. Her blue veins were strengthened to make her arms like steel pillars. She smashed 2 claw whips. The severed limbs flew and clanged against the wall, making a metal sound, and her face was splashed with hot blood. But the third whip pierced her shoulder. The hooks embedded in the flesh and rotated. The green veins spread like blue veins like living insects. The itching and pain exploded. The heart core vibrated like a shell breaking. She screamed and bowed. Her vision shattered into a green and red mosaic. Get out of my body. At this moment, Muxue's phantom appeared behind the stairs. A pale girl's body crawled out from the crack in the wall, her eyes shrouded in green mist but with determination. Ye Zhi. Her weakness is the broken green vein in her heart, and the strange song in the ancestral grave is a summoning spell. The phantom pounced on Su Nuan, the smile on her face twisted into claws, and she tore open a corner of Su Nuan's nightgown, revealing the pulsing green vein birthmark. Su Nuan roared angrily and tore apart the phantom with her claws. Muxue's body burst into green mist and evaporated, but her scream echoed. "Believe me? Break your heart." Ye Zhi's heart was shocked. Muxue's worship of sacrifice burned like fire. She gritted her teeth and pulled out the shoulder hook. Blood spurted out like a fountain, and her full prediction flashed into Su Nuan's heart gap. Lin Fan's remnant soul appeared at the same time. A translucent figure emerged from the light of the necklace, staring at Su Nuan with empty eye sockets, and his hoarse voice was like the wind passing through the bones. "Old debt. Su Nuan, you used me to fall into a dream, it's time to pay it back." He grabbed the cursed heart with his bare hands, and his soul power was like an ice blade that froze the green mist. The front of the sea of insects shattered into ice slag when it touched it, and the cracks cracked and cracked. Su Nuan's face changed suddenly and her turbid green eyes trembled. "Fan, you traitorous scum. Shen Mo's love is not enough?" She waved her heart whip and scattered Lin Fan's half-body, and whispered before the soul shadow faded. "Ye Zhi, the necklace protects you? Love will never die." The light returned to the necklace, and the heat surged through Ye Zhi's blue veins, temporarily suppressing the spread of the green veins, and the strength increased again. Her limbs felt like ghosts, and the speed exploded. A melee broke out between the three of them, and the staircase turned into a battlefield. After the phantom of Muxue was shattered, green mist turned into a rain of blades and cut through the sea of insects. Lin Fan's remnant soul was frozen in a wave of claws. Ye Zhi was a blue-veined madman, and she punched Su Nuan's pregnant corpse illusion. Her belly squirmed and exploded, and the fetuses splashed juice. The old woman squatted down and licked her tongue in an illusion. She jumped up and broke her chin with her knees, and the bones cracked and firecrackers sounded. Su Nuan retreated, her face turned from seductive to fearful, her green eyes widened. "You with both keys together, can you still hold the edge of hatching?" Muxue's fragment. Lin Fan's broken necklace. "Impossible." Her voice trembled, her claw arms waved out of rhythm, and the green mist retreated to reveal the flaw. Despair flooded Ye Zhi's mind like a tide. Although the second key strengthened her prediction and brute strength, there were only 2 rounds of hatching left, and the fetal movement was like a hammer smashing the shell. She imagined herself turning into a lump, eyeless rips spraying, claws crawling and eating relatives and friends, her stomach twisted, tears mixed with green juice sliding down. "You witch bitch," Muxue's fragments have said that the green vein curse of your ancestral grave consumes everyone, and Lin Fan's necklace can't protect me for long. But I won't let you succeed. She growled, retreating, the stairs trembled. The insect sea forward had climbed up the stairs. The swelling on her thumb flooded her feet like a tide, and the black claws made a wet and sticky sound. Ye Zhi gasped for blood and rushed forward. The green veins in her shoulder spread, making her arms swollen and blistered, but her precognition locked her heart. "Witch, die!" She punched her chest with an iron fist, and embedded the blue veins and green heart in her palm. The cursed heart was as hot as lava pulsating, and she got the 3rd key. The resonance of the 3 keys exploded, the entire blue veins flashed with blue light, the fetal movement of the heart core was suspended, the power washed over the whole body like a tide, the itch and pain turned into pure heat. She felt the shackles of reincarnation loosened, and her vision penetrated through the door at the bottom of the maze. The climax suddenly came, and Shen Mo's real body faded and merged from behind the wall. The broken arm and body were translucent, and the cloudy eyes flashed coldly. "Old accounts. Su Nuan, I love you in your dreams. I broke my arm to atone for it and now I am sealed." He threw himself into Su Nuan's blood hole, and his life was yellow. The blue flames of the talisman spontaneously ignited and exploded. At the moment when the 3 keys were fused, the portal on the bottom floor suddenly opened. The end of the stairs cracked into a huge mouth. The pulsating abyss of flesh and blood was exposed. The crawling sound was like the roar of heartbeats rushing up from the endless depths, and the stench of earthy pus poured in like a tsunami. Shen Mo's blue fire burned part of the sea of insects. The smell of burnt corpses was pungent and mixed with rust. and the screams of the flesh waves receded for several meters. His last whisper echoed. Zhi, burned to wake up to reality, but the soul's sacrifice. Be careful. The body turned into ashes and merged into the door, and the cracks in the seal temporarily appeared. Ye Zhi fell into the abyss, the wind roared in her ears, and the 3 keys entered her body. The heat flow surged and pressed down on the green veins. She took stock during the fall. The fragments of Muxue revealed the source of the witch, Lin Fan's necklace protected the hatching, and Su Nuan's heart burned the eternal life contract full power. Precognition like a god, skin burns gradually healed, blisters closed and flashed with blue light. She landed in a maze of flesh and blood, and the apartment turned into the entrails of a giant beast. The heart muscle of the walls contracted and squeezed, the eye sockets blinked densely and dripped green juice, the intestines on the floor wriggled and the black claws expanded and contracted. The crawling sound was like thousands of hearts beating in unison, making the eardrums buzz, and the air was hot and humid and smelly like a rotting uterus. After a brief moment of tranquility, she knelt down and gasped. The light from the necklace illuminated the dark grid. The 3 keys merged into a blue crystal key and inserted into the heart of the wall to pulsate the door. The slightly opened golden light suddenly appeared, and the breath of reality faintly seeped in. The fresh air was mixed with the earthy smell, which made her feel relieved. Finally, are you going to wake up? The blood hole in Su Nuan's chest spurted out green water. She knelt down and bowed, her face twisted and frantic with fear. No, my eternal life. But the hooks counterattacked, and her claws clawed at Ye Zhi's abdomen. The green veins injected and spread. Hatching accelerated fetal movement, and rekindled the internal organs like fire. Ye Zhi staggered back, the stairs collapsed and a black hole swallowed her feet. The power inventory came up. 3 rounds of blue vein suppression, fully activated precognition butchering insects like chickens, ghostly speed, sea of flash claws and brute force smashing walls like paper. She stood up, punched the wall, and the juice splashed on the flesh wall. The remaining lumps were crushed when they crawled closer, and the insect juice was unable to burn her body. The feeling of pleasure was overwhelming, and the edge of humanity was solid. Muxue's admiration, Lin Fan's love, and Shen Mo's atonement were the backing. She sneered. Su Nuan, your eternal nightmare ends here. But the tranquility suddenly broke. The crawling sound behind the door suddenly rose like thunder. The flesh wall trembled, and the giant shadow chased after her. Su Nuan transformed into a giant crawling mother. The body swelled hundreds of meters, the eyeless maw opened and sprayed out a sea of green mist. Countless thumb lumps squirmed in the abdomen. The claws and arms danced wildly like forest whip shadows, and the earthy stench flooded the space. Her core green heart pulsated. Soul sacrifice. Ye, let's die together. The mother's giant claws smashed down, and she didn't have time to fully dodge. The hook pierced the abdomen and dragged into the maw. Green juice filled the lungs and burned the heart. The fetal movement resumed and the vision was black. Ye Zhi's eyelids were like lead seals, stuck in their sockets, and her sweaty hair stuck to her cheeks like insect legs crawling. She opened her eyes suddenly, and the blue veins in her chest were pulsing faintly, like a maggot trapped in an iron can. It was itching and painful like a fine needle repeatedly piercing the core of her heart. Every breath brought out the earthy aftertaste, the stench of the rotten uterus in the bottom labyrinth, and the burning aftertaste of the green juice filling the lungs was still stuck in the throat. At 3:30 in the morning, the bedside lamp dimmed and trembled with yellow light. The rain outside the window was like countless fingernails scratching. The apartment was familiar but twisted. The corners of the wallpaper were rolled up, and blood lines were faintly revealed, like veins crawling under the skin. The first round is here again, Miss Ye. Su Nuan's giggles seeped in through the cracks in the door, as low as broken bones being crushed under the floor, accompanied by a crawling sound click, click, a dense group of claws scraping the wooden board, and the sticky dragging was like a thumb lump arching in the soil. Ye Zhi's heart sank and she reached out to touch her neck. The necklace was empty, and her fingertips only touched the cold skin. The heat of the heart-shaped silver beads, the frozen protection of Lin Fan's remaining soul, and the fused golden light of the 3-key blue crystal all evaporated like nothing. She sat up, the bed creaked like bones being misaligned, and black shadows engulfed the edges of her vision. Muxue's tearing wails, the smell of burnt corpses from Shen Mo's self-combusting blue flames, the 100-meter swelling of Su Nuan's giant mother's eyeless mouth spraying out a sea of green mist. Fragments of memory stuck in her brain like shards of glass, and the boundary between reality and dreams collapsed. She murmured, "No, I clearly inserted it into the door, the golden light. Are you awake?" The laughter outside the door turned soft. Su Nuan's footsteps slid against the door. The wet soles left green traces seeping into the cracks under the door, and the air was suddenly tainted with the earthy stench. Reincarnation is never forgiving, Ye Zhi. Your blue veins, have you remembered my smell? Hatchet. How sweet it is to die together. Ye Zhi hit the bed with her fist, sawdust flying. The blue veins on her knuckles flashed slightly to strengthen her brute strength, and the bedside table cracked into black seams, but the fetal movement of her heart rekindled like a hammer tapping the wall of the shell. She gritted her teeth and climbed up, stepping on the ground with her bare feet. The coolness of the floor penetrated her soles. The sound of crawling suddenly approached her feet. The tip of her claws hooked on the wooden board with a wet sound, as if a lump would break through the board and hook on her ankle in 3 seconds. She jumped away and hit the wall with her back. The wallpaper peeled off to reveal the pink flesh membrane, and the pulsating eye sockets suddenly appeared dense clusters of bloody eyes. The pupils blinked blindly, green juice dripped along the wall and formed a river. They all turned when staring at her, and the wet gurgling sound was like a collective whisper. Cut! Heart! Fear filled her brain like a green mist. Ye Zhi screamed and backed away. She grabbed the coffee table lamp and threw it at the wall. The glass exploded and juice splashed. The hot wire of the light bulb scorched a cluster of eye sockets. The smell of burnt meat was pungent and mixed with rust. But more bloody eyes grew out of the cracks. Her blinking accelerated like her heartbeat. Her gaze caused her to explode with auditory hallucinations. Her mother's bones were shattered in a car accident. Her father murmured, "Don't believe in Su Nuan," and Lin Fan's remaining soul said, "Love will never die, be careful of soul sacrifices." She knelt down and held her head, digging her fingernails into her scalp to stop the hallucination. Blood dripped down her face and mixed with sweat. Her eyes murmured as the pain temporarily suppressed her. The wall flesh shrank with a grunt, and she was temporarily out of sight. But the crawling sound has already crawled to the bottom of the bed. Black claws stretched out from the edge of the bed to hook the sheets. Lumps on the thumbs appeared on top of each other, and the eyeless cracks sprayed green mist and scorched the carpet. "Get away!" Ye Zhi growled. The itching pain in her blue veins turned into heat flowing down her legs, and the path of the lumps flashed forward. She stepped on the 3 leading ones with her bare feet. Insect juice splashed on her ankles, burning like molten lead. Her soles were swollen with blisters, but the brute force was soaring. Her heels hit the bottom of the bed like a hammer. The board shattered and black holes swallowed dozens of lumps, and she screamed like thousands of insects eating their eardrums. She gasped for blood and pulled out her legs. The old wounds on her shoulders and abdomen reappeared with hidden green veins. Her vision flickered with a green and red mosaic. Although her power was there, the restart of reincarnation fragmented the memory of the 3 keys. The photo of Muxue's green vein birthmark, the activation of Lin Fan's necklace, and the acquisition of Su Nuan's cursed heart, all like shadows in the mist. She murmured, "The first key, Muxue's fragment. Childhood room." Pushing the door open, the corridor light flashed blood red. Su Nuan's shadow was far away, leaving a pulsing green handprint on the door handle. Ye Zhi staggered towards her childhood room, the narrow door deep in the apartment, the doorknob rusty like claw marks. She pushed open, and it was as dark as a tomb inside. The air was stuffy and the uterus smelled. Childhood photos were scattered on the bedside. Little Muxue hugged her with a bright smile, and the birthmark with green veins loomed on her back, like the curse mark on Su Nuan's ancestral tomb. Memory surges. During the real-life investigation, Su Nuan pretended to help and provided a forged neighbor's testimony that Muxue's suicide was not supernatural, misleading her to ignore the graves in the apartment, and her green eyes flashed with hunger when she laughed. "Bitch. Designed it from the beginning." Ye Zhi gritted his teeth and picked up the photo. The paper squirmed. Muxue's smiling face twisted into a crack, and green mist hit her face. The afterimage of Muxue suddenly appeared, and the pale girl's body crawled out from the photo. The green mist wrapped around her waist and her eyes were filled with desperate admiration. The 4th round? The memory is broken, and I'm waiting for you to piece together. Su Nuan's fake evidence, the first key hidden in the childhood room, my green-veined soul. The afterimage embraced her, cold to the touch like corpse. Ye Zhi had a flash of precognition, a parasitic clone lurking. She pushed away and Muxue's body was split open and eyeless lumps gushed out. Her claws were like a tidal wave of hooked arms, and green juice burned her shoulders and blistered with white smoke. The afterimage's eyes widened and she trembled in fear. No, I am really a fragment. Look at my birthmark. She tore off her clothes to reveal her green veins, but her clones had fused, her belly was crawling with a pregnant thumb mass, and her clawed arms were stretched out under the shadow of the whip. Overwhelmed by the disadvantage, Ye Zhi stepped back and bumped into her childhood bed. Black claws came out of the bedboard to stumble. She staggered to her knees, lumps crawled all over her legs and the spray-rotten meat sizzled. The pain in her blue veins rekindled and the fetal movement accelerated, and the human auditory hallucinations rang out. Lin Fan, cut your heart and we will die together. Shen Mo, be careful about the soul sacrifice. The afterimage of Muxue screamed from the side. Ye Zhi, your blue vein. Can you hold it down after 3 rounds of accumulation? Her clone eats my fragments. If you lose, the first key will be lost forever. The clone girl's face was bright with a bright smile, and she turned her claws and tongue to lick. The smell of earthy pus flooded the room, and the claw whip whipped the air and sparks flew everywhere. Ye Zhi was desperate, and her strength was fully activated to predict the vulnerability. She struck hard with her bare fists. The blue-veined steel arms smashed the claws and whips, and the broken limbs flew and hit the wall. The insect juice splashed on her face and made her throat burn. Impossible. You strengthened your reincarnation and slaughtered my clone on the verge of hatching? Muxue's clone's green eyes widened and trembled. His voice changed from ridicule to fear, and his claws danced in a chaotic rhythm to reveal the birthmark on his heart. The afterimage Jean Muxue rushed to the corner of the torn clone and screamed in admiration. Ye Zhi, she is amazing. Her weakness is the same as mine, broken green veins. Ye Zhi gritted his teeth and jumped up. His knees shattered and his jawbone cracked into firecrackers. His iron fist penetrated his belly to grab the pulsating fragments of the birthmark. The green juice fountain splashed all over her body and her body was burning. She pulled it out and got the first key. Muxue's memory fragments were scalding into her body like blue crystal beads. The blue veins resonated with the heat and washed away. The itching pain was temporarily suppressed. Foreknowledge clearly penetrated the corridor of the bloody eyes, and ghostly power surged into her limbs. The clone burst into green mist and evaporated, screaming echoed. Before the afterimage of Muxue faded, he whispered resolutely. Su Nuan's false evidence misled her. Her childhood room is the starting point of reincarnation. Lin Fan's token is under the bed. And she ran into a love memory trap. Ye Zhi stood up, gasping for blood, and punched the hole in the wall. The juice of the meat exploded and the smell was pungent. Her bloody eyes blinked and shrank in fear. But the walls of the apartment were fully alive, with pulsating eye sockets growing densely around them, dripping green juice forming rivers on the ground, and the gaze felt like thousands of needles pricking her brain. The psychological fear intensified. She saw her future. A lumpy, eyeless mother, pregnant with worms, eating her relatives and friends. The hallucination broke out, and the phantom of her mother climbed up the wall and licked. Wake up after a heart attack. She scratched her arm and scratched her arm to make deep cuts. The blood spurted out to stop the hallucination, and the pain caused the blue veins and blue light to flash over the blood-stained eyes and whisper. The black claws under the bed retreated, and she reached out to touch Lin Fan's token. The heart-shaped bead on the silver necklace reappeared. The moment she touched it, the love memory reincarnation trap was activated. The field of vision shattered into pink mist. Lin Fan smiled and hugged her in the rainy night apartment. The kiss was as hot as a blue vein when she first woke up, but the crawling sound of the floor mixed in. The thorns on his chest became parasitic and turned into lumps, and she killed him with blood splashing on her face and burning her heart with grief. Reincarnation nested. Time stretched like an eternity night. She was in danger and whispered, "Mortal, love will never die." The remnant soul of Muxue pulled back and said, "Ye Zhi, bite your tongue to wake up. That's Su Nuan's sacrificial hook." Ye Zhi bit her tongue and the blood exploded, and the heat pain broke the memory circle. She got the second key of the necklace to activate the heat flow protection blue vein and suppress the fetal movement, but the surge in power made her punch the door and punch the shadow of the blood-eyed whip at a ghostly speed. The door to the childhood room at the end of the corridor slammed shut, and Su Nuan's laughter rolled down the stairs. Are the pieces all together? The fourth round is interesting, Ye Zhi. The eyes of the wall blinked and the gaze accelerated. The crawling sound surged like thunder from the four walls, and the sea of green mist was faintly formed. Ye Zhi rushed to the attic. On the way, Shen Mo's diary appeared on the table, and the new page showed pulsating words in blood. The third key is in Su Nuan's heart. Kill her to break the curse. But the soul sacrifice will be dead together. Don't believe in the old score before the green veins are cut off. The chill in her heart exploded, and a premonition flashed. Su Nuan's true body was approaching, the green-breasted heart pulsating to hold the curse, and the shadow of the giant mother's body was hidden behind the wall. Despair is pressing down on the city. Although the dual keys of blue veins strengthen the killing of insects, the hatching accumulation is on the edge, the fetal movement faintly smashes the shell, and the reincarnation hook is deep. Kill Su Nuan. Cut the heart and risk the soul? Ye Zhi screamed and fell into the darkness, her consciousness shattered in pain. Wake up? She opened her eyes suddenly and was lying on the bed in a familiar apartment. It was 3:30 in the morning, and the rain outside the window was quiet. But under the floor, the crawling sound sounded again, the low squirming was as before, the necklace around his neck was empty, the three keys disappeared without a trace, and the itching pain in the core of his heart returned faintly. Su Nuan's giggles outside the door filtered in. The first round is here again, Miss Yi. The hook of despair is deep, and the reincarnation has not been broken. Ye Zhi's ankles felt like molten lead, and the flesh of the black claws made a wet and sticky tearing sound. Green juice flowed up the calf, burning the meridians like thousands of fire needles drilling into the bone marrow. Every leap and step pulled out the skin and rolled up white foam, and the smell of blood and earth mixed into a disgusting mist that hit his nostrils. She bit her gums to bits, her tongue burst with blood and the rusty taste suppressed her whispers and roars. The heat from the double-keyed blue veins surged wildly into her legs, and the 3-second path of her claws flashed forward. Dense thumb lumps arched out from the gaps in the stairs, and eyeless cracks sprayed like green fire rain. She twisted around and rolled in the air, crushing the 5 leading ones with her bare feet. Insect juice exploded and slurry splashed onto the wall, corroding sawdust and flew away. The soles of her feet were swollen and bursting, and the pain was as if she were stepping on an iron plate. However, the surge of brute force allowed her to use her strength to eject the wall. Her knees hit the ceiling and the chandelier rained down broken glass. The filaments were hot and burned, and the smell of meat stung her throat. Death together. Heartbreaking. The blood-red eyes blinked faster, and the pulsing whisper in the wall was like a mother's whisper, seeping into the brain. Ye Zhi, mom loves you. Yong'an downstairs, let's dance. End the reincarnation. The auditory hallucination exploded, and the vision was shattered into the scene of the mother's body in a car accident. Broken bones rolling on the road, green juice spurting from the crack, and the smiling face twisted into a dimple. Her heart core vibrated and hit her shell like a hammer. The itching pain in her blue veins rekindled and spread across her chest. Hallucinations pulled her to bend over the black hole of the stairs. Her toes were hanging in the air to explore the endless abyss. A crawling sound sounded from her throat, on the verge of hatching on her own? No, liar.
Su Nuan sau sacrifice hook.
She inflicted a self-inflicted injury on her arm, and the old green veins burn marks tore open a fountain of blood. The pain was like lightning, and her mother's smiling face exploded into green mist and evaporated. But the psychological rift has opened, and the despair is deep. Killing Su Nuan will break his heart, and will the soul sacrifice and death together drag Lin Fan and Muxue's remaining soul into the eternal night? Shen Mo's diary. Don't believe old accounts brings a chill. The old man guarding the tomb. Su Nuan's old love, atonement, or the ambition to seize the key. The attic door at the end of the corridor pulsated faintly. She dodged and jumped in. The door slammed shut to isolate the screams of her claws. She sat with her back against the door and panted for blood. Her sweat mixed with green juice dripped onto the ground and turned into shreds of green smoke. The air was as hot as pus in the womb. Shen Mo's diary floated in the dust of the attic, and the blood words on the new page squirmed and expanded. The altar in Su Nuan's room, the third key heart contains the green vein source, breaking the reincarnation. But the soul sacrifice eats 3 souls, be careful. She punched the floor, sawdust flew, and the blue light on her knuckles pressed against the lingering pain of fetal movement. She sneered and murmured, "Be careful with your mother. In the first round of reincarnation you are all dead. I am still alive to kill the clones. I have the power of the blue vein double key in my hand. I will try to cut your heart out. But the shadows in my heart are swallowing up." Mother-induced suicide. Lin Fan's love memory trap. Muxue's fragments. The memory is shattered in each round. She survives tenaciously, but her humanity is peeled off. The blue veins hatch and accumulate like a countdown bomb. Standing up and groping, Lin Fan's silver necklace reappeared in the dark corner of the attic in the dark crack under the bed, and the phantom of the remaining soul appeared. His pale face and chest were pierced with green holes pulsing, and the frozen soul power mist wrapped around his neck, whispering and trembling in admiration. "Ye Zhi, you strengthen the double key, predict the ghost slaughter insects are like gods." But Shen Mo, his late lover Su Nuan, was used by the witch to fall into a dream and lose his arm. This is not atonement but hatred. The diary makes you heartbroken. He wants to replace Su Nuan to control the nightmare and seize the 3 keys to eternal life. The remaining soul's eyes were wide with fear, and his voice was shaking like the wind. "Zhu, be careful of the soul sacrifice. I will love you forever and protect you from the frozen sea of insects, but the moment I cut my heart, he will crawl out to eat the soul." Ye Zhi grabbed the necklace and put it into her body. The second key heat flow melted the blue veins again, and the frozen protective green juice spread across her arms. The itching turned to numbness and increased her strength. Roaring, "Fan, thank you for clearing up the old score. I don't believe Shen Mo. Kill Su Nuan and cut off the green veins to test the soul sacrifice." Before the remaining soul faded away, he screamed, "God, Ye Zhi, you are on the verge of hatching with blue veins and you are still hunting? There is no one who has reincarnated enhanced survivors like this." Pushing the door out of the attic, the corridor has completely changed. The wallpaper is peeled off to reveal the pink flesh membrane. The pulsating eye sockets are densely blinking and dripping green juice. The bloody eyes are staring at each other as if thousands of needles are pricking the brain, and the air is as thick as a solid substance. She had a premonition. A crawler emerged from the wall. The low-lying ghost rushed forward. Her steps were silent as she stepped on the juice and white smoke was splashed. Her claws protruded from the floor and hooked her ankles. She jumped over the wall and used the elasticity of her flesh membrane to roll. Her iron fist smashed into the wall and the pulp burst into the wall. Her lungs were choked by the hot smell of burnt flesh and insect juice. Su Nuan giggled and rolled from the front, and the phantom figure turned around. The girl's bright green eyes were hungry, her tongue stretched out 1/2 meter and the whip shadow whipped out sparks in the air. "Ye Zhi, both keys are in place? You still hunted me in the first round of reincarnation. You are really immortal." The sarcasm turned feminine, and the belly squirmed with pregnancy lumps and cracks. The spray burned the carpet. The disadvantage is overwhelming. The black claws in the wall are like a tide, drilling through the flesh film, and under the shadow of the whip of the dense claw group, the green mist sea takes shape and swallows the field of vision. Ye Zhi's psychological game explodes. Cutting her heart risks sacrificing the soul and dying together. Her mother's auditory hallucination reappears. Jump off the building to safety. Shen Mo's ambition is suspicious, but the divine power of the blue vein double key surges into his brain, and he calmly suppresses the fear. Try to kill you. Break the green vein ancestral tomb. Cunning song. She pretended to retreat and lured the enemy, anticipating the trajectory of Su Nuan's phantom whip tongue. Dodging sideways and grabbing the hole in the wall to explode with juice, using the force to eject. The lump on the girl's belly exploded with a swarm of insects on her knees, causing her feet to be hot and painful, and her steel arm penetrated her chest with brute force and grabbed the green vein in her heart. But the blood hole in the phantom chest backfired. The green heart pulsating fountain burned the arms, and the blisters exploded, and the soul sacrifices whispered in unison. Together, 3 souls. The field of vision was a green and red mosaic, and the phantom of Mother Lin Fan Muxue climbed the wall and licked her heart open. Impossible. You still capture my green heart after hatching with the double-keyed blue pulse pressure? You monster! Su Nuan's phantom green eyes widened and trembled. Her voice changed from mockery to fear, and her claws and arms danced wildly to reveal flaws. The crawler inside the wall shrieked in fear. She slaughtered the wall like a chicken with supernatural powers and ghosts. Ye Zhi bit her tongue and the blood exploded, breaking the illusion. She forcibly pulled out the green vein fragment near the third key, the cursed heart blue crystal bead, which was hot, but the soul sacrifice hook pulled, and she almost fell into the sea of green mist. Tenacity sneered. Su Nuan, your ancestral witch's dream of eternal life was shattered. The hole in her heart expanded when punched, and the illusion exploded and the green mist evaporated and screams echoed. But the fleshy membrane in the corridor was fully alive. The pulsating eye sockets blinked faster, and the gaze whispered and blasted into the brain. A wave of crawler claws came out from the four walls and bitten. She jumped, but her arm flesh rolled up and blood spurted out, and the green juice spread and the old injuries on her shoulders and abdomen rekindled like fire burning her internal organs. Following the bloody words in the diary, Su Nuan's door is close to the end surrounded by blood eyes, and the doorknob's green juice fingerprints are pulsing. She stumbled towards the door, pushing open the earthy and fetid smell that hit her face like a womb in a tomb. The dark altar appeared in the room. The round meat platform was pulsing, and the bloodletting words soul sacrifice 3 keys to eternal life squirmed in the central ancestral tomb. Childhood photos were scattered and squirming around, and the smiling face of Lin Fan's mother was sprayed. The air was filled with hot green mist, and black claws stacked up and arched under the altar. The old woman Su Nuan had an illusion of squatting on the stage with her tongue and claws stretched out to lick the air. Here you go, Ye Zhi, touch the altar and enter a small reincarnation, and we will die together. On the verge of psychological collapse. Shen Mo's diary trap? Lin Fan warned the old man about his ambitions, and his mother's voice returned, Mom, I'm waiting for you to sacrifice. But the heat of the double-keyed blue veins rushed into her brain, predicting that there were clues hidden in the cracks of the altar, and she roared, Gamble! The divine power of the blue veins will break your civil war. Touching the meat table, the altar pulsated and exploded into a small nest of reincarnations. The field of vision shattered into pink and green mist, and the time stretched out into an eternal night. She fell into the fleshy labyrinth and became a civil war. The 4 walls were filled with warmth, clones surged. The shadow claws of the young girl and old woman were whipped by the forest whip, and the sea of green mist pregnant with lumps and claws devoured her. Disadvantage. The fetal movement of the blue veins accelerates, the green juice burns on the arms and legs, spreads the rotten flesh, and the human nature hallucinations are all awakened. She kneels down, holds her head, mutilates herself, scratches her face, and the bloody grooves are deep to stop the hallucinations, but the clones are standing around laughing. So what if the reincarnation is strengthened? The soul sacrifice will pull you 3 souls. The pinnacle of the psychological game. Believe in Shen Mo's heartbreaking or doubt the ambition to abandon the key. The phantom of her mother crawled closer and licked her ears. Good boy Yangon. Lin Fan's remnant soul was pulled back by the auditory hallucination. Ye Zhi tenacity. The blue veins are still slaughtering at the edge, and Shen Mo's old grudges are hidden in the cracks of the altar. She gritted her teeth and stood up. Calmly and with ghostly foreknowledge, she locked onto the weakness of the clone's green veins. She smashed the birthmark fragments of the belly of the 3 girls with steel fists. She slaughtered 5 of my clones in a small reincarnation civil war? A blue-veined dual-key monster. Su Nuan's clone's eyes widened with fear and trembled, and its claws danced to reveal the cracks in the altar. The afterimage of Muxue suddenly appeared to help in the battle, tearing out a corner of the green veins and screaming in worship. Ye Zhi God! No one has escaped from the civil war. Your tenacity and soul-breaking hook. Ye Zhi jumped up and smashed the old woman's jaw with a firecracker, and penetrated the heart of the giant mother's shadow with an iron fist and grabbed the cursed heart blue crystal, but the soul sacrifice backfired and filled her lungs with green mist, burning like molten lead. Psychological tenacity exploded. Su Nuan, you designed a mass grave to falsify the evidence, and it was all shattered. He pulled out the clues of the blue crystal fragments into his body. The trick of the ancestral tombs of the mysterious song came to his mind, but the altar was completely cracked, and the meat table collapsed and the black hole swallowed his feet. She barely jumped out of the reincarnation of civil war. The door slammed. She fell to the ground gasping for blood. The blue veins of heat suppressed the lingering pain of fetal movement. The cursed heart fragment in her hand was pulsing. The third key was close at hand, but the soul sacrifice risked brain-destroying. 3 souls died together. Will Lin Fan and Muxue fall forever? But a slight reversal. Blood words loomed on a new page of the diary. Shen Mo is no enemy. Su Nuan bites my arm to redeem. Cut my heart and cut off my green veins in source. My heart is filled with joy, and the psychological game is turning. Is the old man's old debt true? Just as he was panting, the altar cracked open and Shen Mo's mutated body crawled out from the black smoke. The sarcoma of the severed arm was pulsing. The blue flame eye sockets were rounded. The smell of burnt corpses was pungent, and the roar was like thunder. The key is mine. The air was wet as the claw arm stretched out and the hook merged with the mother's shadow. The sound of crawling thundered from the whole attic. The sarcoma on Shen Mo's severed arm pulsated and exploded like living maggots. Blue flame spurted from the eye sockets into fire whips and sucked the air. The stench of burnt corpses mixed with green mist hit his face like burning tombs. The shattered meat table in the room's altar collapsed and shattered, splattering his feet with burning pain. Ye Zhi gasped for blood and fell to the ground. The blue crystal fragment of the cursed heart was pulsing and burning in her hand. The heat in her blue veins was surging and the fetal movement was crushing the shell. However, the green juice and rotten flesh spread in her arms, legs, shoulders and abdomen like thousands of insects, eating her internal organs. Her vision was a green and red mosaic. The mother's whisper revived her brain. Ye Zhi, cut your heart to Grandpa Shen. She mutilated herself and violently scratched her face, leaving deep bloody grooves and broken illusions. She sneered tenaciously, but her legs were weak and she couldn't get up. Shen Mo's huge claw hook made a sticky sound in the air and hit her chest. Stupid bug. Shen Mo Lanyon's eye sockets widened and roared like thunder, exploding eardrums. The fused body of the mother shadow swelled to 3 meters high. The tumor on the severed arm stretched into a forest whip and whipped the wall. The flesh membrane exploded and hit the ground. Green mist surrounded the body and the lump formed an eyeless gap and spurted out a river of juice. I used reincarnation to feed you the double key. Just waiting for this moment. Su Nuan eats my arm and breaks my arm and I will live forever. You collect the 3 keys and send them to the door and cut them open. Your heart is melted with blue crystal. And I will control the nightmare forever in her place. The sarcastic smile turned to a ferocious smile, and the crawling sound in the attic corridor filled the whole building. Black claws were hooked out from the cracks in the door and the floor, and the thick smell of earth and pus swallowed up the room. Ye Zhi flashed in advance. The 3-second trajectory of the claw wave covered her head. She rolled to dodge, but the huge claw hit the ground and the flesh-crushing table splashed, burning her face and causing water bubbles to explode. The disadvantages are overwhelming. The blue vein's fetal movement smashes the shell, accelerating the edge like a hammer hitting the core. The humanity is peeled off, and the auditory hallucinations are chanting the sweetness of mutual death. Lin Fan's remnant soul of Muxue is weakened. Shen Mo's blue fire whips the air, burning the air with heat waves, and the burnt smell is pungent. She kneels down and holds her head. Blood and tears mixed with green juice dripping on the ground to evaporate green smoke. No way! Your atonement diary is all bait? Lin Fan's warning comes true. Shen Mo's clawarm whip shadow dancing around to block the road. The lumps and cracks sprayed out into a sea of green mist that swallowed the vision invisible. The door smashed into the corridor, and the fleshy film and bloody eyes blinked and whispered into her brain. The key to eternal life. She bit her tongue and blood burst out. The smell of rust suppressed the illusion. She hit the floor with a brute force steel fist and was ejected. Haha, what about the survivors who were strengthened in the first round of reincarnation? Are you still trying to kill me on the verge of hatching with blue veins? Shen Mo Lanyon's eye sockets blinked faster, and his voice turned from mocking to ferocious. The flesh of the broken arm pulsated and he stretched out his claws to scratch at the old wounds on her shoulders and abdomen. The old wounds enlarged and the rotten flesh simmered. The walls of the room were transformed into a maze of flesh, and the pulsating eye sockets dripped with juices and gathered at the ankles. The lumps in the crawler's thumbs gnawed at the bones and made a sticky sound. She predicted that the ghost would lock on the weak point and dodge sideways. Her knees hit the tumor and her arms exploded with hot and painful blood. However, the blue flames counterattacked and burned the skin of her arms. The pain exploded and her brain was swallowed by a black hole. Her mother's phantom climbed up the wall and licked her ears. "My dear Grandpa Shen loves you." At the peak of despair, the blue vein double key plus the third fragment's hot current rekindled and rushed into the brain like lava bursting the veins. The fetal movement smashed the shell and caused pain. She roared and mutilated herself and grabbed her heart. Try to live forever. The iron fist penetrated the air and rolled with the elasticity of the green mist. He stepped on the top 10 lumps with his bare feet, bursting with slurry and corroded sawdust. The soles of his feet were swollen and bursting, as hot as an iron plate. However, the brute force surged and the flesh membrane was ejected. The broken glass on the top of his knees was filled with blue flames, and the smell of scorched meat choked his throat. Shen Mo's giant body took a step back. Lan Yan's eye sockets were widened and trembling, and his voice shook like a candle in the wind. Her blue veins are on the edge of hatching and she kneels to crush my eyes? Monster! The key turning point exploded. The remnant soul of Lin Fan's silver necklace emerged from her neck. The frozen soul mist spread around her body and pressed the green juice. The green hole in her pale face and chest pulsated. She whispered in worship and screamed, "Ye Zhi God! Shen Mo's ambition is exposed. I will protect you in the sea of worms in the ice. Love will never die. Let's work together to dissect the tumor." The remnant image of Muxue's phantom best friend suddenly appeared on the altar, and the photos of the altar were torn out in a squirming way. Fragments of green vein birthmarks helped, and the beautiful shadows' lumps and claws melted. He Dan's eyes were firm and trembling with fear, turning to fanaticism. "Ye Zhi tu Su Nuan is invincible for 5 points in the civil war. I Muxue. Sacrifice the first key to sacrifice the fire to look at you and tear apart Shen Mo's old grudges." The remaining souls joined hands to make thunderous noises. An ice slag burst into the ground in the frozen mist. Ye Zhi's heart core exploded, and the blue vein's divine power was fully activated to lock the green veins in Shen Mo's tumor heart. The three of them joined forces to rush forward. Her steel arm penetrated her chest to grab the tumor flesh, and the tearing sound was like cloth. Shen Mo's huge body convulsed and roared, "Impossible! The resonance of the three souls pressures me to fuse." Lan Yan's eyes widened and trembled with fear. Her severed arm tumors danced wildly, revealing her flaw. Her brute force shattered her knees and cracked her jawbone. Firecrackers went off. Her iron fist penetrated deep into her body and cut the third key blue crystal. The heart of the curse was completely pulsing and hot, and the strange songs and tricks in the ancestral graves were all floating in her mind. Hi! The soul sacrifice breaks the green veins, and the burning source breaks the reincarnation. But the backlash exploded, and Shen Mo's heart exploded and the sea of green mist swallowed the house. The entire apartment building collapsed with thunder, and the wall membrane shattered into a rain of blood splashing all over her body. Countless creepers' black claw forests surged from the cracks like a tsunami. Dense masses of claws covered the sky with whip shadows, and the smelly earthy pus and mist pressed into her lungs, making her retching the sweet taste of green juice. "Oh my God! Ye Zhi, you teamed up with the remnant soul to cut the third key from my body? No one in reincarnation can compare to this." Shen Mo Lanyan's body was swollen and cracked, and the green mist evaporated. His screams echoed, and the charred corpse fragments fell to the ground. The 3-key blue crystal thermal fluid melted, pressing the fetus to the edge of the shell at the limit of her divine power. She roared and ran towards the altar with a broken heart. The pulsating core of the circular meat platform loomed with the ancestral source of green veins. She predicted the trajectory of the flash claws and leaped into the air and rolled. She stepped on hundreds of lumps with her bare feet. Insect juice exploded, splashed with rain and corroded the wall. The soles of her feet were as hot and painful as molten lead, but she used the force to eject her knees and hit the ceiling with pieces flying. Lin Fan and Muxue's remnant soul protected the sea of insects with frozen shadows. Muxue screamed in admiration. "Ye Zhi slaughtering Shen Mo to seize the key is like killing a god. Burn the source." Lin Fan's ice mist wrapped around his neck and trembled. "I love you for your tenacity. The goddess breaks the reincarnation." The 3 keys were inserted into the heart of the altar. The blue crystal pulsated and burst into golden light fissures. The cunning song of the ancestral tomb was chanting in the mind like thunder. The green veins are burned, the soul sacrifices are broken, and the bottom passage is opened. The flesh table collapsed, the black hole abyss swallowed the feet, the apartment was completely destroyed, the visceral wall, the heart pulsed and exploded the blood river. The crawler claws densely hooked the air and the air was sticky, but the golden light passage was temporarily opened. The feeling of release exploded. Ye sneered and murmured, Shen Mo, Su Nuan, they are all broken. But the climax reversed the peak of fear. Su Nuan's giant mother body was resurrected deep in the altar, 100 meters swollen eyeless giant mouth, a sea of green mist, pregnant with countless lumps, claws, arms and forest whips. The pregnant corpse's stomach slit was sprayed to burn the carpet and sizzled, and the giggles turned to thunder. Ye Zhi, all three keys together? Reincarnation strengthens and gives the gift of eternal life. Shen Mo's old love, swallow you and melt me. The whip shadow of the giant claw drew sparks from the air. The sea of green mist swallowed Shen Mo's scorched body and melted. The tide of creepers turned to bite her. The residual image of Muxue was torn apart by the claw tide and the scream faded. Ye Zhi, be careful of the true mother. Ye Zhi was seriously injured. The rotten flesh of her arms and legs rolled around, blood sprayed out, green juice burned her internal organs like a sea of fire. The fetal movement smashed the edge of the shell. Insects gnawed at the bones and her body arched in pain. The blue veins were exhausted and her divine power was exhausted, and she predicted that it would shatter. Lin Fan embraces Wen Nuan in reality. Su Nuan's neighbor fakes evidence and ignores the graves, and the yellow talisman in Shen Mo's diary spontaneously ignites and seals the source of redemption. The truth behind the nesting of reincarnation is: the first round of strengthening is not human. Is it a trap incubated by blue veins that will forever devour humanity? She screamed and fell to the end of the abyss, her painful consciousness shattered into black. It was as dark as the sultry heat deep in the womb. When Ye Zhi opened her eyes, her nose was first filled with the moist mist of earthy, purulent smell, which made her lungs spasm and retching the sweet smell of green juice. She tried to push herself up, and the burning pain in her arms, legs, shoulders and abdomen was like the heart of 1,000 insects. The backflow of green juice through her meridians made a sizzling and burning sound. A faint blood-red halo appeared in the broken green and red mosaic in her field of vision. The floor was not the floor under her feet, but an endless sea of blood. It was as sticky as the pulp of internal organs. It slowly pulsed and swallowed bubbles. When the bubbles burst, a hot blood mist hit her face like boiling oil on her skin. The crawling sound under the floor was no longer low, but thunderous as all insects crawled together. A dense, wet and sticky sound hooked out from the cracks in the sea of blood. Black claws lined the thumb, and green juice dripped from the eyeless slit device, dripping into the river and hooked towards her ankle bone. Ye Zhi, the three keys are together, we will die together and be sweet. Su Nuan whispered like a mother's murmur, seeping into the brain from the depths of the sea of blood. Auditory hallucinations pulling at the core of the heart, and the residual heat of the blue veins faintly rekindled but could not suppress the fetal movement and the hammer blows on the edge of the shell. She gritted her teeth and scratched her face to stop the deep scars on her face. She hit the sea of blood with brute strength and was ejected. However, the trajectory of the claws shattered in 3 seconds, leaving only the flash of a ghost. She stepped on the leader's lump with her bare feet. Insect juice exploded and rained down on her body. It corroded the skin and flesh, and the blisters exploded with heat and pain like molten lead. She rolled over and fell into a wave of blood. The sticky blood swallowed her waist and squeezed her lungs. The earthy stench and thick fog swallowed her vision invisible. She screamed and predicted that the claw rails would lock onto the weak point. Her knees hit a lump and exploded with blood and hot splashes, but the green juice burned her legs and pulled them like lead. The pain exploded in her brain and made the black hole in front of her eyes expand. The pinnacle of despair. The apartment is completely destroyed. The golden light passage is just a bait. The three-key fusion divine power is exhausted and the human nature is peeling off at an accelerated rate. The auditory hallucination of the mother grandpa Shen sings, "It is sweet to die together." The remnant soul of Lin Fan and Muxue fades away without a trace. The sea of blood pulses in the wall-eye clusters blinking. She stared at the dripping river of juice gathering at her ankles, the tsunami of crawler thumbs gnawing at her bones, wet and sticky. She knelt down and held her head in blood. blood and tears mixed with green juice dripping into the sea and steaming green smoke. It's impossible. The truth at the bottom is also a trap? Su Nuan, you win, whispered. The smile turned to a ferocious smile and the blood mist reverberated. Win? The reincarnation strengthened survivors are given the gift of eternal life. Shen Mo's old love is swallowed up by me. Your blue veins are hatched and 3 souls fall forever. How sweet it is to die together. The sea of blood arched up and countless sarcomas pulsated and the eye socket cracks spurted out. The fog scorched the air. Giant claws whipped from the bottom of the sea to block the road. And the invisible green mist swallowed her vision. She smashed into the sea with brute force and used the force to roll. But the claws hooked her ankles and tore the skin, rolled up and sprayed out white foam. The meridians were burned and thousands of needles bitten the bones, causing her to bend over and scream, falling into a deep wave of blood. Disadvantages are like a landslide. There are only fragments of precognitive ghosts left. The blue veins of the fetus smash the shell. Thousands of insects eat the internal organs, but the power is unable to counterattack. The visceral wall of the sea of blood activates the labyrinth and is completely sealed. The pulsating eye sockets whisper the key to eternal life. She bites her tongue and bursts with blood. The smell of rust suppresses the illusion. The steel fist penetrates the blood wave, tramples on thousands of lumps, and the insect juice fountain is hot and chokes her lungs. But the soles of her feet are corroded and the pain of flying sawdust makes her legs weak and unable to climb. Su Nuan's illusion suddenly appeared in the blood mist. First, there was a childhood girl with innocent green eyes, and then an old woman stretched out her tongue and claws to lick her wet ears. Ye Zhi, look at the source of my summons. The illusion exploded. The scene was brought back to the mass graves of the late Ming dynasty, where young children Su Nuan knelt on the altar of the ancestral tomb, holding the cursed heart blue crystal and chanting the strange song of the ancestral tomb. The sea of green mist spewed out from the cracks in the earth veins. The endless black claws of the nightmare parasite hooked out and swallowed the 3 souls of the living sacrifice. Whip. Eternal life requires a soul sacrifice, and we must die together. Ye Zhi's brain was burned and the parasite invaded like green juice and needle-pricked the nerve plexus, forcing him to relive the cycle of death. The second-level Lin Fan's chest thorn turned into a monster's own blood, spurting warm blood. Muxue pushing the fissure and swallowing her claws, the tide of screams faded, and the third layer of Shen Mo tumor heart cut through the green mist, evaporated and scorched the corpse and swallowed it up. The pain of each death was superimposed 10,000 times when the heart exploded. She screamed and grabbed the blood fountain at her heart to stop the illusion. Get away! I won't give you the memory. On the verge of collapse, the remaining 3 keys blue crystal pulsating heat rekindled and charged into the brain. The lava burst into veins. The fetal movement smashed the shell and caused pain. She roared, mutilated herself and dug into the deep grooves to break the illusion. She calmly suppressed her fear. Use reincarnation to feed me the 3 keys? The source altar is in the heart of the sea of blood. You witch's old debts will be completely shattered. The iron fist penetrated the blood wave and jumped into the sea with the elasticity of the green mist. He stepped on thousands of lumps of insect juice with his bare feet, and the sea boiled and corroded and sizzled with plasma. The rotten flesh of the soles rolled up and was as hot as an iron plate, but it surged with brute force and jumped over the internal wall. The top of his knees pulsated and the eye sockets were broken by the rain and heat, and the smell of burnt meat choked his throat. The waves of the sea of blood receded. The wall-eye clusters widened and trembled, and the whisper shook like a candle in the wind. The residual power of the 3 keys crushed the hatching edge and shattered the eye clusters? Monster! The key turning point exploded. The final residual soul of Lin Fan's silver necklace condensed from the jugular vein, and the frozen soul power mist surrounded the body and pressed the green juice to expand. Scattered, the green hole in the pale face and chest pulsated, whispering in worship and screaming. Ye Zhi God! The bottom sea of blood is endless. I will finally sacrifice my soul to protect you from the insect tide. My love will never die. Pass on the curse-breaking ritual. Inject the 3 keys into the self-destructive heart. The soul sacrifice cuts off the green veins and burns the source of the ancestral tomb, and the strange song is in full swing, and the golden glow of reality will bloom forever. Lin Fan's remnant soul, filled with ice mist, filled the sea with frozen waves and exploded with ice slag and clattered to the ground. The claws of the frozen mass cracked and made a wet sound. Bloody eyes blinked around and they all retreated in fear. The blue-veined goddesses unite to kill the source of the final soul? The fountain burns, the arm blisters, but the ice mist protects the tenderness. The remaining soul freezes and the veins are frozen and brittle. Lin Fan screams feverishly. Ye Zhi tu Shen Mo is invincible in the civil war. I will finally freeze my soul to the sea of blood to look at you. Cut off the warm green veins. The side of the remaining soul is thunderous. The frozen fog freezes the hole in the wall. Bursts of ice slag. The blood sea waves freeze and cracks spread. The creeper tide screams and devours the air with a wet sound. The blue-veined goddess kills the witch source. Deep in the blood sea, the original altar was arched, and the round meat platform pulsated, and the core of the green veins of the ancestral tomb loomed, and the strange song broke the law and floated in the mind. The soul sacrifice self-destructs the heart, injects the 3 keys to break the green veins, and burns the source to break the reincarnation. But the backlash exploded, and the cracks in the altar sprayed out a sea of green mist swallowing the sea. Su Nuan whispered ferociously. Impossible! Will the soul resonance finally suppress my source? The wall's eyes widened and trembled with fear. The pulsating tumor danced wildly and exposed its flaws. She smashed her knee with brute force and cracked the bones on the edge of the altar. Firecrackers sounded, and the iron fist deeply cut into the source of the green veins. The 3 blue crystal keys were fully pulsed and hot. However, the sea of green mist swallowed the vision invisible, and the claws hooked and ankles tore the flesh with wet sounds. The feeling of release exploded. Lin Fan's remnant soul worshipped and trembled. Oh my God! Ye Zhi, you join my final soul to cut the green vein ancestral source from the sea of blood? No one in the reincarnation can do this. The ice mist wrapped around his neck and pressed against the fetal movement, and his pale face pulsated and growled. Execute the ritual. Inject the 3 keys into the self-destructive heart, and I will protect you with my soul power. I love you for your perseverance, Goddess Su Nuan. Ye Zhi sneered and murmured. Su Nuan, Shen Mo, they are all broken. The blue veins of divine power were hatched at the limit, and she rushed to the heart of the altar with a steel fist. Self-destruction and blood spring. The hot and fishy smell of rust is spurting out, and the pain is like the universe collapsing and exploding the brain. But the 3-key blue crystal is injected into the core of the heart and pulses to explode. The golden light cracks. The ancestral tomb's cunning song breaks the law and thunders in the mind. The green veins are burned. The soul sacrifice is shattered. The bottom passage is forever open. The black hole of the flesh platform collapses deep. The abyss swallows the foot. The sea of blood completely destroys the internal walls. The heart pulsates and the blood river flows backwards. The claws of the crawlers are dense, the air is wet and sticky, and the screaming retreats. The golden light channel is wide open. The reality is golden. The sea of green mist evaporates. The green smoke rises. The green veins of the altar are scorched and withered. Su Nuan's imaginary mouth widened and roared in despair. No! The 3-key souls sacrificed to cut off my green veins? The source of reincarnation and eternal life was burned. My witch ancestors were semi-parasitic and guarded the source for hundreds of years. How can you, a blue-veined worm, hatch and destroy your heart? Regret. Use if you gather together to die together, I would have killed you in the first round. Her voice turned from ferocious to trembling and fearful. The residual waves of the sea of blood arched into eyeless lumps, the cracks gushed out, and the river dried up. The clusters of eyes in the wall blinked to accelerate the evaporation of the green mist of tears. Shen Mo's old love is redeemed. The bait of sin is shattered. My clones are fighting in vain. And the 3 souls are harmonious soul sacrifices. The nightmare of Yongba is shattered. The side of the creeper tide is thundering, and the thumb lumps and eyeless cracks are ebbing in fear. The witch of the blue veins is defeated. Destroy your heart and cut off your source, God. Lin Fan's last scream of worship before the ice mist faded away. Ye Zhi, the goddess's tenacious love will never die. The golden light of reality will bloom. It's useless to regret. Su Nuanyong's human trap will be broken. The blood hole in Ye Zhi's heart pulsates, and the hot golden light presses against the edge of the fetal movement, and fragments of reality flash in her field of vision. Her mother's car accident is not green juice. The yellow talisman of the apartment in the graveyard seals the source. Lin Fan's embrace is warm but not illusory, and Su Nuan's false evidence is completely misled. But the climax reverses the peak of fear. Su Nuan's giant maternal body breaks out of the sea from the end of the blood sea. 100 meters swollen and eyeless, the sea of green mist is pregnant with countless lumps, claws, arms and forest whips. Although the green vein ancestral source is burned and the remaining immortality is resurrected, the pregnant corpse's abdominal rip is sprayed with burning golden light. Giggles turn to thunder, mixed with despair. Ye Zhi self-destruction of the heart and soul sacrifice to cut off the source? The gift of immortality backfires. My true mother, swallow your 3 souls for eternity. The giant claw whip drew air and sparks exploded. The sea of green mist swallowed the edge of the golden light channel. Tentacles were as dense as a forest and hooked out from the huge mouth, wrapping around her waist and tearing away the flesh. The smell of earth and pus pressed down on her lungs. The claw-arm forest whip pulled out the rotten flesh and rolled up the green juice to burn the internal organs in a sea of fire. She screamed and her body shattered in anticipation. Her blue veins were exhausted and she fell to the end of the abyss of golden light. Her painful consciousness shattered into black. The black hole on the stair swallowed her feet, and the black claws surged into her ankles. She jumped, but the green juice splashed and spread on her arms. The itching pain was like fire burning her bones. Her vision was surrounded by bloody eyes, blinking and whispering. Together, death. Waking up in the dark bottom, there is no light around and is as oppressive as a womb in a tomb. The air is stuffy, hot, earthy and smelly. The sound of crawling under the floor is deep and gnawing at the soul forever. Su Nuan's whisper echoes like a mother's whisper and penetrates the brain. Welcome to reality. Ye Zhi, the 3 keys are together, and death together will be sweet. In the black hole of shattered consciousness, Ye Zhi felt like she was being sucked in by countless wet and sticky meat tubes. The earthy and purulent green mist filled her nasal cavity like amniotic fluid from the womb, causing her lungs to spasm. The sweet and fishy smell of the green juice flowing backward exploded and rusted at the base of her tongue. She tried to breathe, but she only inhaled more viscous mist. The endless pulsation of the flesh wall appeared in her field of vision. The pink inner membrane wriggled like the intestines of a living animal. The rotten flesh that was squeezing her rolled up her arms and legs. The burning pain was like the heart of 1,000 insects. Every contraction made a low gurgling sound. There was a wet grunting sound, a variation of the sound of crawling under the floor, no longer external thunder, but scratching claws deep in the internal organs. Countless thumb lumps hooked out of the cracks in the flesh wall, hooked on her swollen soles and pulled. Green juice dripped, burned and foamed. Death together. Sweet, blue-veined bugs. 3 souls falling into the mother's womb forever. Su Nuan's whisper was like a mother's lullaby, seeping out from the pulsating eye sockets of the flesh wall. Countless blood-red eye clusters blinked at her. Green juice dripped down to form a river, and the wailing sound was heard. The souls of countless victims were suspended in the flesh. In the tube, the pale face was twisted and elongated. The green holes in the chest and abdomen pulsated, and he let out a heartrending scream. Save, endless reincarnation. She swallows our minds. An eternal trap. The soul's eyes widened with fear, and they pointed at her tremblingly. Newcomer? The goddess with blue veins? No, Su Nuan's maternal body is invincible. Her ancestral origins are burned and only her remaining strength is left. She will drag you to death together. Despair is as heavy as a mountain collapse. The blood hole in Ye Zhi's heart pulses with weak golden light and heat. The blue veins of the fetus shatter the edge of the shell and rekindle, and thousands of insects bite the bones. She kneels in the flesh tube and holds her head, blood and tears mixed with green juice dripping to steam the green smoke. It's over. The 3-key soul sacrifice burning source has still been swallowed? Lin Fan Muxue. Your sacrifices were in vain. The flesh wall squirmed faster, the claws were densely hooked and the air wet the hood, and the souls wailed and taunted. Look, the goddess is also kneeling. The maze of the womb in the mother's body. No one can escape. The peak of the disadvantage exploded. Only fragments of precognitive ghosts appeared. The rotten flesh of the arms and legs rolled around. The green juice burned the meridians and pulled like lead. The green mist swallowed the vision. Only the pulsating eye sockets were visible, and the evil smile, the heartbeat of the giant Su Nuan was echoed in the brain. Ye Zhi reincarnation strengthens you to gather the 3 keys. Now fully integrate into my eternal life gift. Shen Mo love atones to pieces. Lin Fan Muxue's soul is already my nourishment. Your blue veins are hatching at the edge, and you are pulled into the eternal pendant. A huge eyeless mouth arched from the depths of the flesh tube, spraying green mist and scorching air. The claw-arm forest whip hooked out from the inner membrane, wrapping around her waist and tearing the skin to make her wet and sticky. The pain was like molten lead drilling into the bones, making her bend over and scream, and her soul was trembling. The fear ebbs away. She is still struggling? The mother's claws and whips are fully opened. No one can compare to this. Ye Zhi bites her tongue to burst the blood and suppress the auditory hallucinations, self-mutilates and digs deep grooves into the carrion to stop the fetal movement. She calmly suppresses the fear. Use my burning source to backfire? There is a weakness in the mother's body. The green veins of the heart cut off the ancestral graves and the strange song. But the claw tied the tsunami hooked her ankles and turned into white foam, and the green juice river burned her legs. She couldn't climb up. She rolled over and her flesh tubes used the elasticity of peristalsis. She stepped on the leading lump with her bare feet and the insect juice exploded and the heat splashed and choked her lungs. The rotten flesh and blisters on the soles of her feet burst, but she couldn't get away. The soul whispered in despair. The goddess's feet stepped on the insect tide, but the mother's womb was sealed and will be eaten forever. On the verge of collapse, the remaining blue-veined heat rekindled into his brain, and the remnant soul of Muxue suddenly appeared in his field of vision. The pale girl's face was wriggling and torn out from the photo of the flesh wall. The green-veined birthmark faded, and her eyes trembled with admiration. Ye Zhi, God. On the second level, I will push you through the crack and swallow myself. Claw-tied, the first key to memory fragments helped you get here. The mother's heart was exposed, and I joined forces to cut through Su Nuan's true heart to get the third key. Muxue's soul was surrounded by cold fog, tearing away the green mist invisible claw track, and the side of the body exploded. The victim's soul widened. Eyes rang in shock. He joined forces with the remnant soul of her best friend? Muxue sacrificed the god of fire to tear out the mother's inner membrane. Ye Zhi's core exploded, roaring with brute force, steel fist piercing the flesh tube, knee hitting the eye socket, pulsating, broken glass, rain, heat, bursting with the heat of the rain. The smell of burnt meat choking her throat, borrowing Muxue's mist bomb shooting deep into the depths. The 3-second foreseeable ghost flash of the claw tide bursts into thousands of lumps, and the insect juice fountain corrodes and sizzles with plasma. Su Nuan, cut your heart out. The flesh wall squirmed and retreated. The eye clusters blinked and whispered in fear. The residual image of blue vein goddess Lin Muxue massacres the inside?
Impossible.
The turning point was thunderous. Muxue's soul screamed wildly, and the pale fingers stretched out to cut the inner membrane with a wet sound like tearing cloth. Ye Zhi, the first key memory is fully activated. Su Nuan, the witch worshipped the ancestral graves in the late Ming dynasty. The cursed heart blue crystal hides the green veins of the heart. Pierce the membrane wall and inject Lin Fan's second key necklace, detonating the source. Ye Zhi sneered and murmured. The residual heat of the silver necklace condensed from the jugular veins to freeze. Soul power, Lin Fan's whisper echoed. Love never dies, the goddess is tenacious. My soul finally resists the pursuers. Her steel arm tore off the inner membrane of the mother's body, spraying mucus and fishy earth, and pierced into the core of the mother's body. The pink flesh cavity pulsated like a giant heart, and the remaining strands of the green-veined ancestral origin wrapped around the blue crystal heart. Countless victim souls surrounded and wailed and worshipped. Look! She pierced the membrane wall of the mother's body, and the goddess's blue veins pressed to hatch. The claw-armed forest whip whipped the air and chased after him. The ice mist of Lin Fan's remnant soul exploded with a wet crack, and the green hole in his pale face and chest pulsated, blocking the way. Ye Zhi, goodbye. Kiss my soul, burn the source. Ye Zhi's tears mixed with green juice. Her lips touched the cold soul mist for a moment, and the iron fist injected the blue crystal heat of the second key necklace, and the golden light crack exploded and burned the green veins. Sizzling, Muxue's soul joined forces to cut apart. The girl's fingers and claws penetrated the heart of the wet, sticky, tearing sound of thunder. The third key of the cursed heart blue crystal was obtained completely. Su Nuan's giant mother roared in despair. No! All 3 keys are injected into the heart core? Muxue and Lin Fan's remnant soul joined forces to cut my heart? The source of reincarnation and eternal life is completely shattered. My witch ancestor has been semi-parasitic for hundreds of years. Regrets are useless. The peak of pleasure release. The mother's body collapses, the black hole abyss swallows the feet, the sea of green mist evaporates and the green smoke rises, the tide of claws densely screams, the fear swallows the air and dissipates, the victim's soul widens in admiration and shouts. After the blue-veined goddess self-destructed her heart and soul sacrifice, the remaining souls pierced the mother's body and cut her heart. 3 keys together. Su Nuan is defeated, God. Su Nuan's huge mouth widened and trembled, the juice flowing out of the eyeless lumps was exhausted, and the whispers turned from ferocious to fearful. Ye Zhi, the ritual backfired, and all the remaining strength of my true mother's immortality was destroyed. But the 3 keys cut off the green veins, and the ancestral graves sang strangely. Burn my soul for sacrifice. The green veins in the heart were scorched, withered, and the pulse was stagnant. The lining of the flesh wall was completely destroyed, and the pulsating eye sockets were bursting with ice slag and biting the ground. Before the remaining soul of Muxue faded away, she worshipped and screamed. Invincible divine power, Ye Zhi, the golden glow of reality will bloom forever. The pale face roared. I love your tenacity, goddess. The crawling sound is broken. The souls set off the thunder, and the tears on countless pale faces evaporated with the green mist. They broke the endless nesting of reincarnation? In the first round of the soul sacrifice, the 3 souls joined forces, and the goddess slaughtered the source of the witch. Ye Zhi is on the verge of physical and mental collapse. The 3-key blue crystal in the heart is pulsing with golden light and hot currents. The blue veins are fully opened and the pressure is hatching. The rotten flesh of the arms and legs is rolling with green juice and burning pain. A white light suddenly appears in the vision and the world is shaking. The golden channel at the end of the sea of blood is wide open and shines. The mother body disintegrates into endless green smoke and rises to the sky. The sound of crawling merges into the heartbeat and rekindles but fades like a candle. The ceremony is completed. The thunderous song in the ancestral grave reverberated in her mind. All the green veins are burned. The soul is sacrificed to the broken source. The reality is forever opened. She crawled out of the remains of the flesh tube with brute force, stepped on the last lump with her bare feet and the hot insect juice splashed, and the last worship whisper before the soul circle faded. Goddess, reincarnation is broken, thank you. At the end of the black hole abyss, white light engulfed everything, and the painful consciousness shattered into golden fragments. After the white light dissipated, Ye Zhi opened his eyes fiercely, and his nose was filled with the familiar air of the apartment, the smell of clean dust mixed with the fresh morning light, without the smell of earth, pus, or the sweet smell of green juice. She pushed herself up, and there were only shallow scars on her arms, legs, shoulders, and abdomen, and there was a dull pain. The blood hole in her heart was pulsing steadily, and the residual warmth of the golden light suppressed the edge of the fetal movement. Under the floor, it was silent, only the heartbeat echoed lowly, and the crawling sound blended into the pulse like a phantom, leaving a permanent shadow but no longer approaching. The sky outside the window was dimly lit, and at 4:30 in the morning, the confirmation of reality fragments exploded in my mind. The old news about my mother's car accident was not a fantasy. The yellow talisman of the apartment in the graveyard had been broken and loomed. The door of Su Nuan's room was closed tightly and there was no movement, and the warm and unread message on Lin Fan's mobile phone was, "Ye, are you awake? I love you." Relief and calmness came like a tide, and a sense of accomplishment arose spontaneously. She whispered, "Reincarnation is broken. 3 souls sacrificed and I returned." Pushing the door out, the corridor light was soft, and the neighbor Su Nuan's figure flashed through the crack of the door. First, the girl's green eyes were innocent for a moment, and the old woman's tongue and claws were grinning, but the phantom disappeared at a glance. The wallpaper had no pulse in the eye sockets, and only dust floated. She took a deep breath and smelled the lingering fragrance of coffee coming from Lin Fan's room. She pushed the door open and saw his pale face embracing the warmth and reality without a green hole in his chest. "Ye Zhi, you were in coma for 3 days and the doctor said that your heart miraculously healed on its own. A nightmare." She burst into tears and hugged Lin Fan tightly, supporting Lin from the side. Fan's eyes widened and trembled. "You scars are like battle scars? Did you hear the sound of the floor? But now it's quiet, magical." He touched his heart with his fingers and the blue crystal afterglow loomed, and whispered adoringly, "My necklace. Why is it on your neck? I love you forever. But you are tenacious to save my soul." Dealing with trivial matters is as gentle as the aftermath. Ye Zhi calls the police, and evidence of Su Nuan's alleged fraud is exposed. The investigation records of the fake grave massacre are completely broken. Huang Fufeng Yuan's apartment foundation dug up the remains of a witch in the late Ming dynasty, blackened and withered. The news headlines shocked. The curse of the mysterious ancient tomb was solved. The white-collar woman Ye Zhi provided key clues. The source of the reincarnation dream was burned. Passers-by commented on the internet. She broke into the apartment alone and had a series of nightmares? The victim's soul seemed to be freed, and the crawling sound on the floor stopped. The goddess. Shen Mo's old residence was empty, and the red words on the new page of the diary diluted, "Atonement is true," replacing wild heartbreak, and the blue crystal beads in Muxue's childhood room remained, providing the first key to eternal memory. The world changed because of her. The apartment was about to be demolished. The fragments of the yellow talisman turned to dust. The green fog disappeared forever, and the residents gathered with wide eyes. "Ms. Yi, there was no crawling sound after you woke up. The doctor said that your heart self-destructed, and you murmured 3 key soul sacrifice during the 3 days of coma." Hero. Her smile suppressed the heartbeat of the crawling aftertaste, and she became calm and tenacious. Tenderness. "It's just a dream. But real." Lin Fan walked hand in hand in the morning light. The silver necklace shone with the afterglow of the second key, the fruit of achievement, fame and status. Quietly, invited by a psychologist, signed a book contract, Survival of Reincarnation in Dreams Within Dreams. The treasure of the 3 keys, blue crystal melted heart core and eternally pressed blue veins hatched. The eternal shadow turned into the source of power. The morning light penetrated into Lin Fan's room through the gap in the curtains and fell on Ye Zhi's pale but determined face. She leaned in his arms, her nose filled with the faint smell of cologne on his shirt, mixed with the aftertaste of coffee, as warm as a layer of mist that blocked out the earthy stench of nightmares. Lin Fan's fingers caressed the silver necklace around her neck, and the blue crystal afterglow pulsed faintly, reflecting his wide eyes full of shock and admiration. "Ye Zhi, your scar looks like it was torn apart by a wild animal. The doctor's hands were shaking when he examined you. He said your heart healed itself like a miracle. For 3 days in coma, you murmured 3 key soul sacrifice." The voice under the floor. "I heard it, but now it's quiet. How did you do it? Why is my necklace around your neck?" His voice trembled, his Adam's apple rolled, as if he had touched a taboo. The air in the room suddenly became dense, and the dust in the corner floated like fine souls. Ye Zhi suppressed her heartbeat with a smile, and the residual warmth at the edge of the blue-veined fetal movement was like a hidden fire. She whispered, "In the dream, you protected my soul, Lin Fan. We worked together to cut open the source." The sense of accomplishment surged through her limbs like a warm current, and the dull pain in the scars on her arms and legs turned into a source of strength. She pushed him away, stood up, and stepped barefoot on the cold wooden floor. Silence. Only the heartbeat echoed low, and the crawling sound was like an auditory hallucination integrated into the pulse, as weak as fingernails scraping the inner wall of the heart. She took a deep breath, and the light from the corridor of the apartment shone softly. The door of Su Nuan's room was tightly closed and there was no gap. Only a trace of the phantom of a girl with green eyes flashed through the crack in the door. In an instant it turned into an old woman's grin with tongue and claws, and dispersed into the dust with a hiss. Lin Fan followed, his face turned pale and he pointed at the door tremblingly. "Then, what is that? Su Nuan? Wasn't she arrested?" The police said that all the evidence of fraud was found, and they dug up charred remains from the foundation of the apartment, as if they had been burned for 100 years. His breathing was rapid, his eyes widened with fear, and he took a step back and knocked down the coffee cup. The clink of broken porcelain echoed like the sound of claws scratching. Residents began to gather, and several neighbors at the end of the corridor pushed open the door and came out. Lao Wang's hair was messy and he stared at Ye Zhi with wide, cloudy eyes. "Miss Yi, are you awake? 3 days ago, the whole building was crawling like thunder, and the smell of green mist came from Su Nuan's room. When we called the police, her room was empty, and only bloody fingerprints were left on the wallpaper. Now it's all silent. When you murmured goddess, we were chilled. The women trembled and folded their arms, whispering in unison. Shocked. She has a heart miracle, scars and battle scars. The news said that the ancient tombs in the mass graves were cracked and the whole city's nightmares stopped. God. Ye Zhi nodded calmly, sweeping the crowd with gentle but tenacious eyes. The golden light of the pulsating blue crystal core suppressed the auditory hallucinations. It's just a coincidence. Move. The apartment will be demolished soon. The crowd dispersed in admiration, whispering like a wave. Look, the goddess is calm and suppresses fear. The reincarnation is broken. She saves the souls of the whole building. The days passed by like a calm illusion. Ye Zhi signed a book contract, Survival of Reincarnation in Dreams, and the invitations from psychologists were fully booked. During the TV interview, she smiled and talked about persistence and love, and the audience's barrage exploded. The goddess is tenacious. The power of the blue veins is stronger than the nightmare. Lin Fan walked hand in hand in the morning light, and the silver necklace shone with the afterglow of the second key. He whispered infatuatedly, I love you forever, Ye Zhi. You saved my soul, and the moment I broke my heart, I felt like the ice and mist would never leave. Now it's really warm. The apartment demolition team entered the scene. The fragments of the yellow symbols were scattered, and the charred remains of the mass graves were exposed on the news headlines. There was a flood of hot comments on the internet. Ye Zhi burned the source alone, and the ancient tomb was cursed to pieces. Wake up from the dream. The crawling sound will never stop, goddess. Shen Mo's old residence is empty, and the red words in the diary are diluted. Atonement is true wild heartbreak. The blue crystal beads of Muxue's childhood photos remain on the bedside, and the first key memory remains forever. The gentle smile of her best friend. But as night falls, the abyss of desire opens again. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Ye Zhi sat alone at the desk. The flickering candlelight reflected the blue crystal of the silver necklace, and the golden light pulsating from the core of the three-key melting heart pressed against the edge of the hatching blue veins. She looked through the police files and found out that Su Nuan's fraud and false evidence were all uncovered, and there were detailed records of the rituals of the witch ancestors seeking immortality in the late Ming dynasty. After the strange songs in the ancestral graves were broken, the remaining green veins were suspected to be scattered throughout the city. Suddenly, the crawling sound under the floor resumed faintly. It was no longer silent, but the scratching of claws merged into the heartbeat. The rhythm accelerated like a lump on a thumb, hooking the inner wall of the ventricle. The smell of earthy pus seeped out from the cracks in the floor tiles, and acrid green mist rose. Lin Fan broke in, his face livid and trembling, holding his head. Ye Zhi, here we go again. Even better than 3 days ago. Su Nuan whispered the sweetness of shared death. The remnant restarted. He knelt down in fear with his eyes wide open, his ears pressed to the floor, and the thunderous sound of claws echoed in his brain. The whole building heard it again. Residents screamed and fled. The goddess, reincarnation has not been broken. The disadvantage is overwhelming. The pulse of the blood hole in Ye Zhi's heart accelerates. The blue veins of the fetus smash the edge of the shell, and the phantom pain of insects gnaws at the shell rekindles. She bends over and drips with cold sweat, and the green mist in her field of vision engulfs the wallpaper. The pulsating eye sockets suddenly appear and blink. Su Nuan's phantom arched out from the crack in the door. The green eyes of the girl turned into the crack of the old woman's lump. The tongue and claws of the forest whip hook sounded wet in the air. Ye Zhi, the 3 keys have cut off my green vein ancestral origin, but the remaining power of the witch's immortality has scattered the earth veins, and the blue crystals are all let us die together. The apartment trembled and the residents screamed in unison. The green mist is choking the lungs, goddess, save us. Lin Fan stood up tremblingly and stared in admiration. You can still fight? Ye Zhi bit her tongue, bursting with blood, and suppressed her voice. The remaining earth veins are not burned. Muxue, Lin Fan, you 2 souls join hands. A thunderous turning point. Predicting the ghost's claw track for 3 seconds, Ye Zhi's brute force steel fist hits the floor, cracking the bricks and causing dust to explode. His bare feet step into the wet and sticky flesh under the floor tiles. The green juice river burns his legs and makes him unable to climb up. The claws are dense and the hooks roll over his ankles in spray foam. The remnant soul of Muxue suddenly appeared and the pale girl tore it out from the hole in the wall. Her green vein birthmark faded and her eyes were wild. Ye Zhi God! The first key memory is fully opened. The remnant core of the earth vein ancestral tomb is hidden under the foundation of the apartment. The soul thread of the witch Su Nuan is reunited, pulling the whole city to die together. Lin Fan's silver necklace blue crystal heat condensed the ice mist soul power. He roared crazily. Don't you love me? D. The second wave of freezing claws, I block it. The residents gathered on the stairs and yelled in shock. Goddess smashed the floor into the flesh god. Ye Zhi used the ice mist to shoot into the depths, the pulsating lumps of broken glass, the heat of the rain, and the smell of meat choked her throat, and the claws scraped and the tsunami came after her. An endless web of green veins arched out from the depths of the flesh, the ancestral tombs hummed and thundered, the shadow of Su Nuan's giant mother's eyes pulsated and blinked ferociously, drops of green juice flowed into the river and burned the air to sizzle. Goddess of blue veins, so what if the 3 keys are complete? The earth veins spread forever. The maze of maternal fetuses in the city. Your tenacity is exchanged for eternity. The claw-armed forest whip whipped the air, bursting with sparks, wrapping around her waist and tearing her skin to make her scream and bend forward. Lin Fan's ice mist exploded and the frozen lumps cracked with a wet sound. His pale face and chest were blocked by blue crystal pulses. Ye Zhi kissed the soul power and burned the residual source. Her tears mixed with green juice and her lips touched the warmth for a moment. Muxue's soul joined hands to cut the inner membrane of the wet cloth and tear it. The third key of Su Nuan's heart blue crystal. Inject the remaining core of the earth vein. Ye Zhi's steel arm tore the net and the mucus sprayed. The smell of earth pierced the core. The remains of the charred green-veined ancestral tombs pulsated like a withered heart. The cracks of the 3 blue crystal keys' golden light exploded and burned, and the residual image of Su Nuan roared and trembled in despair. No! The whole city's souls are sacrificed to pieces for my eternal life? Regret. It's useless to die together. The peak of the release of the feeling of pleasure. The earth vein's flesh tunnel collapsed and the black hole swallowed the feet. The sea of green mist evaporated and the green smoke rose to the sky. The screams of the claws receded and swallowed the air. The resident staircases widened in admiration and shouted. The remaining souls of the goddess jointly cut the remaining core of the earth veins, and the 3 keys burned the ancestral origin together. Su Nuan was defeated, God. Su Nuan's afterimage cracked and gushed juice dried up, whispering in shattered fear. Ye Zhi. The ceremony is completely broken. The earth veins are gone forever. But my soul thread is endless. The green veins were scorched, withered and stagnant, and the eyes exploded with ice slag that stung the ground. Before the remaining soul of Muxue Lin Fan faded away, she worshipped and screamed. The power is invincible. The reality is eternal. Ye Zhi climbed out of the cracked brick with brute force, stepped on the last lump with bare feet and splashed hot insect juice. The golden glow channel illuminated the world, and the white light swallowed up the pain. The white light dissipates, the real morning light shines brightly, the apartment demolition machine roars, the floor is forever silent and there is no crawling sound. The heartbeat is steady and the blue pulse is forever suppressed, and there is no fetal movement. The golden light from the core of the 3 keys melted into the source of power. Ye Zhi stood up, and the scars on his arms and legs faded. The residents gathered around and worshipped with tearful eyes. The goddess fights the earth again, the whole city is still. The news is broadcast live. You enter the floor tiles, we witness the soul sacrifice, God. Lin Fan hugged Wen Wan and opened his eyes wildly. You have grown up, Ye Zhi. The tenacious goddess. Love will never die. The books are selling well. Experts worship the spiritual hero. And the world will forever change because of her. The nightmare rumors stop, and the blue crystal protects and spreads. The golden glow slightly appeared on the edge of reality. The low crawling sound on the floor resumed, and Su Nuan's mother body whispered forever. Together we will die, sweet. But the hook is looming. In the dead of night, the crawling sound under the floor reappears faintly and merges into the heartbeat. Su Nuan whispers and hallucinates. Death together, sweet remnants? The afterglow of white light flashed in her mind, and the world trembled. She clenched her fist and whispered. Come on, next round. I am already a god. But the hook will bite forever. Late at night, Ye Zhi is sitting alone on the balcony, Her heartbeat is low under the starry sky. The faint crawling sound is like a whisper blending into the pulse of the universe. Su Nuan hallucinates and whispers, "Sweet, infinite reincarnation, the outer layer?" The world trembles with golden light. She clenches her fist and sneers. The blue vein's divine power rekindles. "Come on, cosmic womb. I am ready." The tenacious eyes pierce the night, leaving the shadow of the soul forever and turning into an endless journey.